All right, calling the October 11th, 2018 Rush Lake Watershed Restoration Fall Meeting to order. Thank you everyone for attending tonight. In attendance is all directors except for Gary Page and 6 members of the public, including Melissa Curran of Stantec and Ellen Barth of the DNR. They're included in the 6. So I've circulated to everybody the agenda and minutes, which are in a little different format. They're a little more concisely written in text, but I think hit the high notes, but also the full audio recording of the last meeting is available online in 2 different ways. Curious if any questions or remarks on the minutes before we look to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 19 minutes.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve the July 19 minutes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No opposed. Passed unanimously. We'll move on to the Treasurer's report, but one quick comment. On the prior minutes, I do have some visibility to their utilization online. 10 different people used them on the YouTube link that was posted, and up to 4 people downloaded them off of the Google Drive. So it did expand our reach. It wasn't a 0. So something to keep an eye on as we progress into the project. Second item, Treasurer's report. Todd?
Sure. The prior checking account balance from our July meeting was $10,346.97. The balance as of October 11th, 2018 is $10,056.97. I forgot my glasses, so sorry.
You need some?
150s?
Yeah.
Sorry.
You mean 1.5?
Yeah, 1.5. The net decrease of $290 was a result of 3 payments, all for water samples paid to the Wisconsin State Hygiene Lab. One in the amount of $25 on August 8th, one in the amount of $110 on September 13th, and one in the amount of $155 on October 9th. And $190 of the total was for lake samples, phosphorus only, and $55 times 3 comes to the $190. Actually, that's 110, isn't it? No?
55 times 3 is 165.
And the 25, all right.
Yep.
June, July, August samples, phosphorus and chlorophyll. $100 was from stream samples for phosphorus at 4 different sites. That's
Okay, thank you, Todd. Any questions or comments for the Treasurer?
Move to accept.
Art moves to accept.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, Todd. Thank you.
They're not even girly girls. You can take the sticker off now.
now I can read.
Okay, before we get to grant stuff, I want to touch off on lake monitoring updates. We've had a number of things. First up, water level management. Ron, could you update us where we are on the lake?
At the time of the July meeting, the dam should have been very near 1.4, which is the target level. And on July 31st, it was at 1.6. On August 11, it was just a little less than 1.6. On August 28th, after 5 inches of rain, it was at 1.9. On August 31st, after another 2.5 inches of rain or more, it was at 2.3. And of course, at that time, the gates were open to full top draw. And since then, that's where the gates have been. On September 3rd, we were at 2.1. On September 7th, we were at 2.5. September 21st, we were at 2.0. And 3 days ago, on October 8th, we were at 2.2. So we are in a flooding situation. And with the gates wide open, that's where the levels are.
Ron, are you getting a lot lot of cattails floating down?
Yes. There are 4 gates in front of the dam right now, gates 1, 2, 3, and 4, that have significant cattail bogs in front of them. The bog diverter is for the most part full. I do intend to have those cleaned before cold weather, but right now the stream bank would hardly tolerate the heavy equipment to get in there to do so we just live with it until we have drier conditions. And if the water level was lower, the highway department employees that go in there to clean those out, it would be a little less, I don't want to say dangerous, but it could be dangerous with the high flow we have right now, but it would be better working conditions when the water level would go down. So that's what I plan on waiting for.
The level in the Walk-on Dam area is about as high as I think I've ever seen it, and particularly in October. And the major carp run going on right now too. Anybody wants carp, you walk across the backs of them.
There were a few carp at the dam on September 7th, but on the 21st of September and on the 8th of October, I did not see any carp. So there were a few that got up there. They were large.
You know, I don't know how they would have made it. They may have been in the lake and went over the dam and then were staying there. I've been watching it down at Walkaw there pretty regularly, and I don't think they can get up there.
It's interesting to stand down there and watch them try to jump. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing how they can jump.
Yeah, and about a month ago I was down there with a friend of mine and was walking up on the path where the overflow or the release is, and that was full of carp in there, and there's also a big mature bald eagle. It hauled one of the carp up, and the first thing he was eating was the gills. I thought that was unusual. But I didn't think I'd ever see something like that in Walker. Interesting.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
So it's a top draw right now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, nothing further. Thank you for the report, Ron. Okay, we'll move on to water quality monitoring then, which is going to comprise both the citizen lake monitoring and other lake site, as well as stream monitoring. The program's been going well. We resolved at the last meeting to add stream sampling to our repertoire, and I've been doing that since. I've made 2 submissions, and I'll have a 3rd submission here coming this month. I've been trained up on stream sampling protocol by Dave Bolha, who was referred to me by Ted Johnson. And Dave Bolha and I actually toured the lake yesterday. And I showed him the sites that we were doing, and we visited a couple of additional tributaries that are coming into the lake. And we actually looked at pretty much every tributary that came into the lake that you could access by road. And he appreciated the tour and had some nice insight to share. I do have all of the sample results back except for my September stream sample and my October stream sample, which I won't take until the end of the month. They're supposed to be spaced about a month apart. So I have a handout which I'm going to share. 5. And on here there's 3 charts, and I'll bring some back to the audience. The top 2 are for the lake sample sites. The bottom one is for the stream sample sites. Do you mind sharing?
But I don't have any glasses.
So I'm going to start with
I'm just kidding. I have more.
The top samples. The top sample is total phosphorus on the lake, and I have the 2 sample sites, both the north sample site, which is the 2 areas on the left, and the 3 on the right are the southernmost. Those are the citizen lake monitoring ones, and those are the ones that Ted Johnson sampled in 2016. So the results of the phosphorus, and that's the food for the algae, basically. The results in 2018, if you look at that green bar, it's a little bit higher on the north side than 2017, but it's still within that 0.04 range of acceptable levels before you might see algae blooms. And for 2018, the green bar is pretty consistent on the north side, same with, or the south side, same with the purple. Where it was interesting was we didn't start lake sampling last year until late in the summer. So this year's spring and June samples were new, and the results of those were, they were a little bit higher, and it's certainly something to monitor. Definitely not what we experienced back in 2005 pre-restoration. Those levels were roughly 10 times higher than what we had here. But overall, the water quality, well, it was, it wasn't bad water. It looked nice. The worst that it got was it was a little cloudy, but it was suspended sediment. It was kind of a windier day that I was out. But if you take the wind factor out, the water was clear. I could see a Secchi disc on the bottom every time. There wasn't a time I couldn't get a Secchi down to the bottom and see it. So that was very positive. But then the phosphorus levels dropped, and it's within that acceptable range in July and August on the southernmost site. Otherwise, everything checked out fine there. The middle graph, that's chlorophyll. That's sort of if there's smoke, there's fire. That's what the algae gives off on the lake. And that's one where that July response was higher. The chlorophyll level of 10 is what's in the lake monitoring protocol as being where you start to see a detrimental impact. But again, the Secchi disc went down. There wasn't any noticeable algae bloom. Things were fine. I wouldn't have guessed that the result would have been subpar, but because the lake looked so nice. But other than that, the number dropped back down into a very nice range that, based on the gradient or the scale that they provide, is very good. So from a lake standpoint, 2018's in the books, more useful data points, and we've got the two sites there, the north and the south. The bottom chart, this is first that we've talked about this having any real results for phosphorus testing within the streams. And if you flip from the top page to the back page, there's actually a map of the lake, and it's really lightly colored because I used kind of like a transparency effect, so you could see the lake and the sub-watersheds. So if you look on that page, there's like this yellow circle with stars in them. The 2 sample spots in the lake itself have one of those on it, and then the 4 sample spots that are stream sampled also have the same kind of yellow circle. The orangish circle in the bottom left corner is Vines and Rushes Winery, which Google insisted be on my map, so it's there. So anyways, those sites I sampled in August and September, and the August results are on the front page. And these are all things that I visited with Dave Bolha yesterday and spoke about the results. So the 2018 Island Road sample, I call it Island, but really it's Henderson Creek at Island Road. That one was just beneath a tenth, which is above the 0.075 sort of acceptable limit that the department looks for phosphorus in tributaries into your lakes. What Dave commented to me is if you see numbers that are in excess of that, what you run into is a challenge where that phosphorus gets loaded into the lake, and the lake can have a hard time keeping up to recycle the phosphorus and grow it in the plants. And the comment that he shared with the other 3 sites, County E, the northern mountain site, and the southern mountain site, those being in the 0.3 range, those are at a level where you can dump it into the lake, but basically the cattail probably isn't doing much to diminish that number. It's eating some of it, but it's accumulating. And the risk with shallow lakes environment, per talking to Dave yesterday, is that they can do well for a while managing that phosphorus load, but eventually you can run into a spot where the lake goes turbid again, even with all the vegetation there, which is one of the reasons why I've been pushing for the updated lake management plan and everything else we've been talking about. Because if the lake does go turbid and it looks like 2005, but we have 2,500 acres of cattail out there, yeah, that's really bad, what you said, Art. So it's one data point. I don't know that you get all bent out of shape about one, but it's not a good start, but at least it's a start. The September results will probably come back in another week or two, and October I'll get sometime around Thanksgiving. So those levels, they exceed by over 400 to 500% depending on the site. And those sites were selected by Dave Bolha based on their drawing from different areas in the watersheds. So for example, there are two on Mountain Road that are within a quarter to a half mile of each other. And I challenged him and said, well, why would we want two that are right next to each other? And his comment was, well, the north one is drawing from all the lands to the east of there. The south one is drawing from the sod farm and kind of the impoundment that's kind of off of Island Road. So the site you sample from, you're sampling a very different result from very different parts of the lake. So they can tell you if one's better than the other or what. So that was why those two are nestled so close together. Of all the sub-watersheds, we touched the two big areas in the southeast sub-watershed with those two mountain sites, because the southern one drains to the north from those areas like the sod farm, and the north one collects from the east. At County Highway E, that one collects everything in the northwest sub-watershed coming from the west before it goes to the lake. And we got Henderson Creek, which is the biggest tributary of that. I think it might be the only real tributary in the Henderson Creek sub-watershed. And based on those four, we've covered every sub-watershed that drains into Rush Lake except for the southwest sub-watershed and the north sub-watershed. And there are two green dots on there, which were tributaries which Dave thought if we wanted to expand our sampling, they're natural places. The one that's in the southwest, where it is, it's probably a good 8 to 10 feet wide drainage ditch, which looks impressive when you see it, but it really kind of begins at County Highway E as nothing. So it turns from just a trickle to something you could put a boat in real easy, quick. So that one is a natural candidate to add if we wanted to, and then it would cover the southwest sub-watershed. And there's a stream that crosses Osborne Road that's he thinks is probably going to be the poster child for what a stream coming into the lake might look like. The water is tremendously clear. There was a large growth of watercress there. There were sand banks on it, and there was a lot of flow in it. It looked like something that was very year-round. So his comment to me was, this looks very much like groundwater coming out, and it's running you're getting very clean groundwater that's running into the lake. So his view was that one will probably tell you what water that's coming into the lake should look like based on what normal, quote, normal water might look like, because it's just coming out of the earth. But that was his guess. So that concludes my report on what sampling was done in my meeting with Dave. I am prepared to ask for a resolution as far as 2019 sampling would go, but I wonder if there are any questions or remarks on the sampling that was done to date before we talk about anything forward-looking.
So are they seeing higher results at a lot of places sampling this year because of all the water, or?
He didn't talk too much about other places other than we referenced back to the 2005 report that we did in the Lake Management Plan, and that one had this WILMS phosphorus sampling model, and the comments in there were this is a problem kind of everywhere with settlement, and one of the challenges he communicated is that if your phosphorus levels are high enough in your streams, you can get to a point where those tributaries can be listed as impaired, and if they obtain that designation, then there could be some requirement with the EPA to make an effort to improve the quality within the tributary. So, that certainly sounds like work. We're not there yet, but it's something to be mindful of. So to answer your question, Kevin, he didn't get into today, wherever it was, but he did share broad comments that it's a problem that's in a lot of places, and there are a number of tributaries and environments like this that are getting that designation currently.
Which one is the north Mountain Road one?
That's this guy. So that's the one where I think that's the one. There's a drainage ditch that comes to Mountain Road. It goes through the culvert and then it opens up into a big circle.
East to west?
Yeah, it comes east to west. It opens up into the circle. I think it's the place that where they would dip perch or whatever back in the day. It's right at the culvert is where that sampling happens.
Then where is this one at?
That one is, on Mountain Road, if you got on Mountain Road, and you were heading west towards the lake, and then it takes a sharp 90 to the north, right at the corner, I have to launch a skiff, and then I go in, 50 yards, and then I go south 50 yards, kind of towards the sod farm.
Got it.
Brett, when you sample on Island Road and also when you sample on County E, you're a fairly good distance from the lake. And it would seem like you're flowing through quite a bit of marsh in between those sample points in the lake. And, what could happen in that marsh as far as the nutrient levels in the sample. Did this fellow that you worked with, did he have any comment on that? Or I was just thinking that you would be sampling closer to where it enters the lake than a half a mile from it.
He didn't share any remarks on sampling closer to the lake, other than where your risk is if you have just an unabated, here it comes flowing into the lake and it's just going straight into the lake. In some of these areas, like in the case of, what's a good example?
Even at that Mountain Road, it backs up.
Yeah, because like some of these, it's clearly water, but then it hits kind of a pasture, like a wet meadow sort of thing, and that's the environment where some of that phosphorus will filter out and become part of that area. It won't make it into the lake itself. So his remark was, it's better if you have some sort of protection from that water going straight, and whether it's something like that, kind of like a field that can collect it or a wet meadow, like for example on Island Road, the culvert goes across and there's supposedly there's a drainage ditch on the west side, and that kind of tracks to the northwest and connects up by Island Air Road. That's a big wet meadow. It doesn't really flow straight shot. You can never put a skip through there. It's very slow. So that's better than just a straight shot to it. So he said there wasn't an easy answer on it, but ultimately the county land and water department or commission or whatnot can help us think about that. They have staff that can help with going out for grants, actually implementing things to improve areas like that help cut down on the amount of phosphorus loading that happens in the lake. But, it's not anything that he said you go rush out and do because you have one sample. It's not like we have a gun to our head on it.
There's where Graham's Road goes north and south in there a little bit from Lake. You guys just fixed that up the other day, I think. It crosses right in there, a low spot too. And then that flares out into a big marsh area and that stuff, so that could be a sample point too if you're wanting to get a little closer to the lake.
Yeah, that's actually that green dot that's on here, Art.
Okay.
That one's just south of where it fans out.
Does this high water affect that at all as far as sampling, as far as more phosphorus getting into the lake?
It certainly can, because the runoff, like Kevin, we spoke after the last meeting and about phosphorus needs to bind to something. So like if you look at, when Dave and I were driving around, there was one field that had just a trickle. It maybe had this much water coming off the field every second. It wasn't a lot, but it looked like milk chocolate. And he pointed, he's like, that's what you need to fix, because that's full of it. So in an environment where you don't have that and it's just kind of normal phosphorus coming off of fields, it's a much different animal.
Well, what you have in the brown water is you have soil sediment.
Right. And that carries it.
Yeah. The soil particles.
So at the 831, we had 2.3, like back in Green Bay and to the east, there was a lot of that milky sediment just hanging. So that's what that was then, for the runoff. No?
I don't,
Yeah.
could be, yeah, I suppose.
Because that's close, it's not out in the lake, it's more towards the cattail shoreline. I haven't seen like that in years. But in a couple days it was gone.
Yeah.
But we had 13 inches within a week there.
If someone was to ask me overall, the quality of the water in the lake, just off the cuff, is it fair? Is it excellent? Or is it poor?
I'd call it good for now.
Good for now?
It's good
Meaning
for
that
now.
it's fair overall.
No, it's good.
It's good. Okay. I've had people ask me that, and that's what I've been telling them.
It's clear. There's no noticeable algal blooms. There's some higher readings early on in the season, but they quickly dissipate. And when they are high, it didn't have any negative impact on water clarity or aesthetics. Like, there's a scale. 1, the water couldn't be any better. 2, minor cosmetic problems for noticeable problems, but still fine for fishing or swimming. Granted, I don't know many people who would swim in Rush Lake. But I ignore that part. 3, noticeable problems that impair fishing or swimming. And I'd be happy to have fished or swam in the water anytime I was out there.
Would it make any sense to do any sampling at the dam? You're looking at what the water is coming out of the lake?
That yellow dot that's in the lake, Ron, is like the last point right before it enters the channel going down to the dam.
Okay.
Because when Ted helped set that point, because that was the one we were paying for outside of the Citizen Lake Monitoring Program, he specifically steered us away from going down to the dam because you want something representative of the lake. So conceivably down by the dam it would be pretty close to that, but because you've got cattails that abut that channel the whole way, you could get a better or worse answer depending on whatever's in the cattails that isn't necessarily reflective of what's really going on. I mean, we could. Ted just didn't sound that excited about it. There was more interest from Dave on adding the 2 additional sites, because then what that would do for stream sampling is that would cover all of our sub-watersheds. We'd have everything that comes into Rush Lake covered. We don't do anything in the Walkout Creek sub-watershed because that's kind of its own separate animal right now. Like, it's kind of silly with Rush Lake watershed restoration, but, U.S. Fish and Wildlife does Uline kind of solo, so whatever. But, so anyways, Dave's comment was if you add those 2, you cover every sub-watershed coming into Rush Lake. And then he wasn't too excited about adding samplings beyond the 6 regularly scheduled samplings that happen May through October, once a month. But Melissa, in our conversations, Stantec's view is event-based sampling where you have that 8 inches of rain or whatever. Those are good ones to have because you find out how bad it can be when it really happens. So I asked him, well, if we did event sampling, what would be a good number of event sampling to go for? Like 2 what? And he said, whatever, if you want to, it's more information and it could be helpful. So I'd defer to Stantec for their views on how many we maybe shoot for.
I should ask our engineer. I can ask him that question.
Because for what it's worth, the sampling, if we just said, let's continue status quo with what we're doing next year, the lake sampling, we'd pay for 4 instances on the lake to do that second site. We'd continue to be in the Citizen Lake Monitoring Program. So to have 2 sites on the lake, the price tag's $190. The streams are where it adds up quick because right now we have 4 sites at $25 a phosphorus sample. It's $100 a month times 6 months. So we're in for $600 if we do a full year. If we add the 2 sites, we're up to $800. And if we added another event in there, tack on another $150. So that's where, depending on what that answer is, we could go from somewhere between 800 for just the bare bones water sampling to $1,500 if you wanted to build in some slack for extra stuff. But the good news is I think it'll count towards our lake management plan as match. So whether we wouldn't have to vote on it now. We've got all the time in the world to do it. But since we're talking about it now, we could resolve something at this meeting and then move forward, whatever the board's comfortable with.
Well, it's the money we put into it, plus you're doing all of it, but I mean, that would be your time towards it too for the match, wouldn't it?
Yep. The stream sampling's easy. I launched a skiff in there, which originally I was unhappy about because that sounds like a lot of work, but honestly, I was home in 75 minutes, in this last month when I didn't have to do the lake samples. The lake samples take longer than you think, and the streams take less than you think. So it doesn't really bother me if we added 2 additional sites and, a couple events. It's a big deal. It doesn't really impact me at all. It's easy.
I think it'd be a good idea myself.
I think that's a reasonable amount of testing. Is that something we can go on record with at this point, or is this just make it into a motion? Or?
Well, I was prepared to make a motion. If Melissa said something bold and in the affirmative on how many is the correct number, I'd have the exact number. What I had, if we did 6 stream samples, so we covered every sub-watershed, and we added 2 event-based sampling, so we get that 10 inches of rain, and I go out and do it because something big happened. That number would be $1,200 on the stream sampling. So $1,200 for the stream plus $190 on the lake puts it at $1,390. So I figured if we did all that, rounded up $110 because ordinarily what I do is I just drive the stuff to Madison and make it an errand day with the girls, and I go out on the town. But if I got to go out and do stream because all of a sudden the rain happened and I wasn't planning on it, I'm heading to the post office and I'm shipping that stuff like same day or overnight because the ice has to stay ice during transit. So anyways, all I'm saying is I'd tack on $110 for contingency and delivery fees in case it didn't work out, and call for around $1,500, which is 4 lake samples at the north site, or 4 sampling instances at the north site, plus 48 instances of stream sampling, which is 6 sites at 8 instances, which is 1 every month from May through October, plus 2 that are event-based. And that would be $1,500. So we could start with that, and if we had more events that we wanted to get next year, we could always resolve to add an extra $300 or something if we really, really wanted it. So
what if we make the proposal with the range $1,400 to $1,800 expenditure per year for these sites? Would that make sense? Or?
I don't have an issue.
Give yourself some elbow.
Make your motion. I'll second.
I make a motion that we make a range of $1,400 to $1,800 available with sampling that you just described to us.
And I second.
Okay, so what were the last 2 words you said, Bruce? 14 to 18. It sounded like ascribed to us, but that didn't sound like
at the sites that you had
at the sites as described. Okay, so Bruce has made the motion and Art has seconded the motion to spend $1,400 to $1,800 in 2019, and making that available for sampling at the sites specified as described here in this meeting.
I got one question before you go there.
Yes, please.
If we get grants, is it possible those grants would help pay for that sampling? Or is that something we're just doing on our own?
Well, it all goes into the same pot of money, and I've got a financial commentary later that goes with it, but if we get a $25,000 grant from the Lake Planning Grant, the state's going to pony up $25,000 of effort. Where that $12,500 match comes from, if we have a Wheeling University that beats their chest and says we want to go whole hog on this and we'll donate all of our services, we'll hit that 12.5 really quick. If we don't hit it, then the money we spend, we'd either have to just pay it outright, or we could say, hey, we paid for this work and the work counts. So it's kind of left pocket, right pocket. unless by chance, we've got somebody rides in on a white horse and says they'll pay the full freight.
So the answer to that basically is probably those grants will help pay for that.
Awesome.
I mean, we'd be doing the sampling probably anyways in a lake management plan update.
We want the data. I mean, we have nothing if we don't have, very consistent, regular samples. We have nothing to assess progress from if we don't do it. So
the only reason I'm asking that, or one of the reasons I'm asking that, is with Northern Environmental, they took sampling, et cetera, but we didn't ever really do anything with that I recall. It wasn't like, okay, this stream should be cleaned up, or we've got a problem here. And they did the initial sampling of the lake water, and then after that was done, then we out of our treasury had to come back. I think we spent, I can't remember exactly, $7,000 for them to come back and show the samples again, which the lake was all cattails. They couldn't remove it out there, and they tried to do it on a 90-degree day or whatever, and I don't think they really accomplished anything. And I sure to hell know we never did anything about the results. So I'm questioning having the thing documented and showing what it is. To me, would only on the first go around would be fine. You've made your baseline, and then to me, that if you really had a problem and a stream coming in or a ditch, whatever it is, in the future, then you could say, okay, we got to do something about this. Was my thought originally when the cannery was still working in Pickens, that all that stuff came right from there, came across Hunter's land and came down and went out right on island, the ditch that we're talking about with the culvert that they reset in there. And I don't know if that was even ever sampled, to be honest with you, in that original Northern Environmental.
There are no sites on the DNR surface water data viewer. So from a stream sampling standpoint, when I went to look for it, there was one sample in Henderson Creek in 2013, which was within the acceptable range, but other than that, I couldn't find anything.
Well, I'm just saying that is my concern. I'm not going to vote against it on the first go-around, but if we were sitting here next year, or the third year, I think I would have a problem with it.
Well, we're only just saying this is for 2019, right? You're asking for 1 year of sample.
2019, yeah. And I guess just a few comments, Doug. So in speaking with Ted earlier, the dynamic between nutrient loading and why we got the response from cattail as opposed to bulrush or other things, that's probably going to be one of the key dynamics that becomes part of our answer. So we got interested in this earlier this year when we were talking to Ted. So that's number one. Number two, we studied this stuff before, but the way it was developed in the binder is they use this WILMS model, which is basically, I don't know how to describe it, as crystal ball to hokey, Ellen?
I have no idea.
Okay, well it's a method of estimation for what the levels are in the streams, and in speaking with Dave on the phone earlier before we met yesterday, the real value that he shared is it says this information is great because it validates that modeling, which says this is what it should look like based on the land types that are around the lake. So what that'll tell us is how close or off the mark that other modeling is, so we can compare it against that to figure out whether it actually fits us. But also third, the levels that we have on the stream sampling, with the exception of Island Road, which is worse than standard, not by a lot, but still worse, it's high by 4 or 5 times, which is kind of like you go to your eye doctor and they say, boy, your eye pressure looks really high, let's check it again next year, and if we need to get you on drops for glaucoma, let's do it. So to me, it all kind of fits, at least at the moment. I appreciate your comment. You don't want to spend $1,500 on a book report on, decimal points for the sake of doing it, but I think it probably helps us get there. Melissa, do you want to comment as your role as our consultant?
Yeah, I would agree it's important because especially to, when we do the models, when we get the grants, we'll take that information and we'll put them into the models and that'll help get a much better, picture of what's going on.
Well, I was just concerned that, we were down this road before and I don't think it was done correctly by Northern Environmental by any stretch of the imagination. I think they came up with, the only thing, and I can't remember exactly in there, but it was okay. But, lake quality was okay.
I thought they did more of a vegetation inventory than a...
Well, they did, but they took water samples, and I know initially they did, and then I know we wrote them out a 7,000 plus check to then come back to document what actually happened.
That was vegetation, the 7,000.
Yeah, okay, vegetation.
Yes, please.
The thing is about like this sampling here is, I think this eventually this group and everything is going to morph in to something that Ellen presented to us years ago. If you remember, is there was that group that was from on the north end of Horicon Marsh there, and basically what it is I think eventually for us to address some of these issues, you're going to be having to talk with landowners, in these tributaries, maybe getting grass waterways and bank improvement and all this kinds of stuff, which is what they're doing in Green Lake, and that's where this data is going to come in helpful to be able to, because if you got to talk to somebody and say, we're trying to go and improve Rush Lake, and we've got all these cattails, and some of it is maybe because we're getting runoff off of some of your land. Could you think about tweaking your operation, or maybe planting grass along the stream bed or banks? We got to have some data to tell somebody, not that we're just pulling something out of the air.
Yeah.
And that's where this will be helpful.
That's probably the best reason. I agree with you.
There are grant programs for that too, for making things like that happen, and
Right.
and that's where Dave said working with the county, they can really help us get traction on that when the time is right.
And I'll be, while we're sitting here talking about money and that, I think something like this, as far as water quality monitoring and that, to try to improve water quality and all that might be something that if you approached Rob Webster for his thing, he's against Roundup and all of the herbicides, but maybe this is something you could sell to him to give you some money.
Mm-hmm.
How many sites are you proposing for next year, Brett?
6 stream sites and 2 lake sites.
Okay, so I've got here 4 stream, 2 lake right now.
Yep,
And then these 2 are going to be added.
that's right.
Okay.
Yep, you've got it.
Okay.
Repeat that again. What was that?
6 stream sample locations and 2 lake sample locations. And those are all on the map that on the second page of the handout I provided. Okay, we can have further comment. There's a motion on the floor that is seconded, but I want to invite us more comment if it's
Time to vote?
Yeah, call the question.
all right. So the motion's been made and seconded to make $1,400 to $1,800 available in 2019 for water sampling at the site specified here on Rush Lake. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. If nothing further on water quality monitoring, I have just one other comment. Jerry Trochinsky, our Nepeuskun zoning administrator, he's on the Lake Minnesuing Sanitary District, or assist them. They're up north, way up by Ashland. They just purchased a new oxygen sensor, and their old one they've just been storing and it's collecting dust. And he approached us, Ron, to see if there was any use for it, and there absolutely is. Oxygen information can help us understand the phosphorus as part of the equation. So he gave me the device tonight, and that'll be part of the lake sampling that we'll do next year throughout the summer. So we'll have more information coming from that.
That was a gift, correct?
That's right. Yep, I have the letter from the sanitary district, and I'll be sending them a thank you.
And Bruce and I own one of those too. I thought it cost us some money to just have ours. Okay.
Okay. Next on the lake monitoring, aerial photography. Ellen was so kind to share flyover photography that happened right about the time of our summer meeting. Ellen shared I could post it on the Facebook page, so I did. It's out there. They basically flew a loop and a half around Rush Lake and gives a bird's eye view on what it looks like out there. The spray definitely took. And the areas where the spray happened, there's plenty of water in them. I know some of the neighbors that I've talked to have been out in them sniffing around and are thinking about hunting some of them. So at a minimum, it's resulted in more usable lakes. So, Ellen, do you have anything to say about the aerial photography?
Our pilots fly a lot, and if I ask them if they're going by Rush Lake, they can take some more pictures. But Todd and we've had the discussion about drones. I don't know if you have a drone, but the department, we don't do drones, but that would be another way that we might get very specific. We want something really specific at a much lower level. I don't know how high drones fly.
Legally, they can only go X amount of feet. I don't know.
Like 400 or something?
And I thought the pilots did a nice job for what I asked for without saying height. And I never get charged for it because it gets looped into the fire control.
Yeah, I think the imagery turned out real nice. One comment on the drones. I dug into this a little deeper a few months ago just to see if I would want to present a motion that we purchase a drone for the watershed. And what I found from reading about drones is that even if you use a drone and you don't do it for a fee, but you use it for any potentially business-related thing, you have to be registered to operate that drone with the FAA. So if I bought one for my own personal use, and I flew the drone up and I showed you a picture I took at it at this meeting, my view on it is technically I'd be breaking FAA law by being an unlicensed drone operator. Same thing goes in the guidance it provides, if I came out and I flew a drone over Kevin's farm and showed him some pictures, I'd be just as guilty doing that to him, even if I did it as a friend.
You sub it out.
We could do that to Stantec. They offer that, and I'm sure there's others.
I've never read that. The restrictions that I read is the liability of it. And maybe that's because of what I do. We can't fly a drone at the racetrack. We can't do that. Well, there's a crowd there, but a photographer can do it. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because we're supposed to be licensed. But that's, from our end, it's liability. Sure. It's liability side.
I just want us to be careful on that one. Not that everybody gets drones for Christmas and they're eagerly presenting things.
My doesn't work, and I haven't used it in 8 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a catch-22.
So if you like how the DNR pilots are taking your photos, it's free.
Oh, they're great.
Yep.
But it's not scaled. It's not to scale. So you can try and scale it out, but it's not.
Sure.
They're flying at different elevations. It's just a bird's eye.
Mm-hmm.
Or for the strip and deck side.
Sure. Okay, anything else on the aerial photography or any visual observation? Okay, so this is something that we'd ordinarily say for the shoot the breeze section of the meeting, but just putting it out front before we get into the meat of the grant process. Any general observations on what's going on in the watershed with hunting season having started and whatnot? Anything worth mentioning to the group? This is open for anybody.
How was opening day? It's decent. Better than last year.
Always amazes me, all the gunshots when I don't think I can see 30 feet in front of me.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
I just, what are they shooting at? I mean, how can they identify what they're shooting at? It's crazy. Anyway, off the subject, I guess.
Mallard quacks and Drake makes his goofy noise. When it's dark, that's the only way you can figure that out. If it quacks, you don't shoot it.
I'm not a duck hunter, you can tell that.
There's ways.
Okay.
So, the cattails look stressed to me earlier this year than before. Could that be high water?
Seems like they died out pretty quick.
Yeah. That's stress, meaning they
That's just in the last few days.
But
They were,
it's a couple weeks ago already. They looked like they were.
before opening day, they were already getting.
Yeah.
Todd, are you with the opening day? About the same as usual? Or?
Yeah, that's such a loaded question.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, it's about the same as normal. I mean, but there are a lot of ducks around, and there's so much water. It's just a patience game. If you wait, you'll be fine.
The Fox River system, because it's all flooded out, there's a lot of ducks over there.
I'm crazy to come up here at home. It's unbelievable. I've never seen it like that.
Well, the other day I motored up to the north end. It's the first time I've been out on a lake for years. I think going up there and putzing around a little bit and then coming back, I think I saw 5 ducks. I saw 2 turtles that were basking on a log up there on the north end there and a couple frogs. But as far as water up there, I was telling Doug where that terminus was of that one swamp devil channel that we took there. After I got done talking to you, Brett, I was trying to maneuver back in there, and the push pole went down, and I started getting an idea of, maybe I should check to see what the depth is. And in one spot right there, putting the push pole down and holding it up and standing up, it was chest high on me, so I'm figuring that's 5 feet of water in there. And I poked around and got up to the boat landing on the north end there, and every once in a while, so that was 3.5 feet at least. So bottom line is you should be able to go anywhere in there you want with that swamp devil, but we should be getting that thing as soon as possible so that you can maneuver that.
We got a Swamp Devil section towards the end of the meeting where we'll talk a little bit more about that, and that's why I have the projector along too.
What about muskrats? We're supposed to have more water. We've had more muskrats.
I have seen more muskrat sets and houses that are being built more this year than last year. I did see one dead one though. It was off a trail. It wasn't where you thought it got run over.
I had 5 otter hanging around my blind a couple times already. See when they come real close and playing around. Must be one family.
I think they live on your shoreline over there. I think they live on your shoreline.
Well, this is out toward the middle of toward Byers.
Eating
About
those
halfway
perch
across.
all those perch up, aren't they?
They only keep the sick and wounded perch. And they love baby carp.
That's good.
I don't think they're that much.
There's a lot of floating bogs.
Yeah. I just noticed
And
that.
even haven't been on the lake since this big west wind, but I would imagine it's pushed some around again, which is, it's just part of the deal. It's helping to open up the center.
It's a whole new puzzle every time you go out there.
We can wake up every morning and there can be a dog sitting up by one of the wood duck houses out in the open there, and by afternoon it could be gone. Or it decides to try to plant roots and then he's got to go out and move it, you know. But
I spoke to Gary earlier today, and he said his brother Jay was out pulling bogs out at the South Landing, because I know they had drifted in there pretty tight, and I know you were pulling some out too, Seth. So thank you and your family for doing all that stuff, because if a guy came up on the South Launch on opening day and it was drifted shut with bogs, it'd be sad. Wouldn't be too happy about that.
One of our hired guys went down there the day before opener and cleaned it out, so it was good.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you have any reports of anyone getting lost?
I had a guy that he went out, he come back in, and the channel for the boat landing had a bog drifted in it, and he couldn't see past it, so he couldn't find his way out for a while, and then he figured out that the bog had floated in there, and they kind of dragged the boat through it and then made it back in the channel. But they were out there for hours.
So fun.
The pressure's down, I would say, as far as, I didn't see what the landing was opening day, but it appears to me that there's not as many hunters.
Mm-hmm. Gary said there were plenty of cars down there.
Yeah, the whole, the circle up above the boat landing was full opening day, all the way up. There wasn't any place to park.
What about the next day?
Second day was significantly less.
Yeah. It's the least amount of hunters I've seen first week. And there's so much water everywhere. So there are opportunities elsewhere.
well, it's kind of interesting too because you got some hunters that don't like the high water and then some that don't like the low, and you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. We're going to the high water where the ducks aren't feeding. Well, with us living out here and we watch, they're not sitting around there feeding on the lake. They're going out to the sod farms. They come back at night, they leave in the morning, and they hit the lake for that. And that's what we're noticing.
Right. And they, when the water is high, they're going back into cattails, and like Green Bay is full of sago, and that was holding them back there. So they are eating that, but they're roosting and using it for staging. That's the biggest thing that I was, and I don't know if it's urban legend, Rush Lake is a staging lake, where the ducks come, kind of like quarter time, they stage there and circle up and leave, go south.
Well, you used to have a widget way up on the north end, right?
Right. There used to be thousands of them.
Yeah.
This year we've got a lot of wood ducks.
I've only seen two.
Huh? Oh,
Yeah.
we watched them like crazy. Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm only.
And it looks like they're coming off the side farm.
Probably.
There's a big hatch this year. Yeah.
My mom and dad aren't around to feed them anymore, so. My mom and dad are around to feed them all the time. Because we used to have them eating the acorns and everything all the time. He'd walk right up and my dad always had a feeder.
So you know how most of
Yeah.
in the spring it goes in pairs, and when one comes out, the rest follow up like a little curve, and they go down the old and stuff, and they'll perch up in there and hang out.
We don't have that anymore. I think it has a lot to do with with them not being there. My mom and dad.
Okay.
I looked at cycle where adults.
They'd throw a little food out once in a while, and corn or whatever. And
Yeah, let's move on for now. So we're 10 after 8 and don't want to get too much past 9. So, grant application update. We've been working as a subcommittee with Melissa, both kind of interacting by phone, but we've also met in person too. So in August we developed the base of the pilot program. Stantec, Melissa and Aaron put forward what that might look like. That base that we reviewed and approved conditionally as a good start. That drives the NRDA grant application. We submitted an application for the NRDA grant at the end of August. That is going to support an invasive species control grant on the lake. Also tonight, the document I'm going to get to you in a moment, we called everybody today about, is the Aquatic Plant Management Plan, which underpins that invasive species grant, because you need an APM plan to go along with that grant. And also, so beyond that, so we developed the base, we applied for an NRDA grant, and later this year on December 9th, or December 10th, we'll be applying for the Lake Management Planning Grant Application. And also on February 1st, that's the due date for the Aquatic Invasive Species Grant Application. So one grant applied for that we'll be getting an answer on probably in the next month, either later this month or first half of November. And then we'll figure out the Wisconsin DNR grants after that. The reason I have the projector going right now is just to show that pilot program in short. This is the grant application that we sent, and this is good enough for now. So what we're putting forward, and Ellen, this is what I forwarded to you the other week, is we're talking about 4 10-acre test plots on a hydrology gradient on the north side of the lake. 10-acre plot is really divided into these 4 subplots, which are a combination of spraying, cutting, and a control. Cutting, so there's one where it's cut twice, there's one where it's sprayed 2 different ways, and one of the 4 quadrants has a single cutting first, and then 2 different kinds of herbicide applications after, both like a general broadcast and a wicking. So in all, for each of the 10-acre plots, it's getting 5 different management techniques. And to date, we've only used one, just general broadcast herbicide. So if we look, and these are all attachments, so spraying, thanks to Ellen, we were able to develop this map. By we, I mean Melissa, was able to develop this map of herbicide applications that have happened since the restoration. You can see they're split out by period that they were provided, but originally they centered on the north end of the lake, and this last one in 2016 were more broad. This is the transect that we're talking about, where we're doing these 10-acre plots. The 10-acre plots are the red squares that are on there, and they all have something unique to offer. The southernmost 2 red squares, those ones were 100% water pre-restoration. In 2005, before the drawdown, there was no emergent vegetation there, and now it's solid cattail. The southernmost one was actually treated with herbicide in 2016, so any experimentation that we might be able to do there, we can contrast against the second most southern one, which didn't have any sort of treatment in 2016. The third one up, kind of in the middle, that area is, that's right where the fork is on the Swamp Devil trails. And that one at the time of the restoration was roughly 50-50 water to vegetation. It was decent heavy marsh kind of conditions. It wasn't lost to cattail, but it wasn't open water either. And then the one furthest to the north, that one was basically solid cattail pre-restoration, but historical aerial imagery from the 30s in an undammed environment when, and I don't have a water gauge reading from the day the 37 photography was taken, but in 1930, when the guy from the railroad commission or whatever it is was down there, the level was basically at 1.4. So in an undammed 1930 Rush Lake, it was at 1.4. And all I'm saying is in the 1937 photography, that top square was half water, half emergent vegetation. So that one, it's not necessarily a lost cause either, but in the 4 sites that were selected, it's probably the most challenging one by far.
This one, Brett?
Yeah, that's the one, Todd. That's the one. So in short, this is what we put forth to NRDA in our grant application. And this is what we'll be socializing with Ted. Melissa and I, as we meet with Ted later this month, as we start to socialize the other document, the document I'm going to hand out now, which is the no, this. Oh, you got that? Okay. This is what I emailed to everybody this morning. This is the draft of the APM plan. Melissa, do you want to talk about this for a minute before we move on to other grant stuff? We've got a lot of, this is the last time I'll make it, and it's on you. We've got till January to finalize this, and part of our meetings with Ted is to help give this the best chance of success with winning an award at the DNR.
Just to clarify, we have until no later than December 1st to finalize this. That means it's 60 days in advance of the February 1st deadline.
Okay, well, thank you for correcting me.
Yeah. So we have, a little bit of time, but, with holidays, December 1st is going to come up pretty quick. This plan was written off a template that I used for the big AIS Control projects. So it's one the DNR has seen and approved. It's new to TED, but it's not new to the DNR. It follows kind of a very general, high-level overview. I don't really specifically talk about the pilot project in here because this is meant to be a little more broad. This is meant to be a plan that can last 3, 4, 5 years beyond even our pilot program. So it's just kind of a high-level overview. And it goes through some history. It goes through, the kind of current conditions. It does address both cattail, non-native cattail, and Phragmites. We do have non-native Phragmites, and if we have the option to start controlling that, that's highly advised. We have our recommended management, or a recipe of management options, which include mechanical control, mowing, burning, chemical control, and then some really general timelines. High-level stuff. So we'll see. We're going to give it to Ted. He's going to come back and have comments. We'll incorporate them. We'll get it to him by December 1st. And then it's really up to him to approve. And then we'll, kind of revisit this during the planning phase, and maybe this becomes an attachment to the bigger lake management plan. Maybe the text of this gets included in the lake management plan. That's yet to be determined. This could be, live as a standalone document as needed. Really, the intent of this is to apply for the grant. We need this to get grant funds. So it's one step in the process.
Okay. So, I don't know, just show of hands, who's read through this document? I know I sent it this morning. Okay. Maybe half. Any remarks on feel for what it reads like, and just comments on just an initial impression on it?
I think it talks about what we've been talking about for quite a while to try to do. So it's right on. I think it's right on. There's not much in here that. There's nothing in here that I found that I had a problem with.
It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't leave you ask any questions or anything. I mean, it's pretty much all there.
Do we think there would be any need to ever do any curly leaf pondweed control? Because it really, we can make it more broad to include more than just Phragmites and cattail.
Curly leaf pondweed was inventoried after the restoration as being an invasive that was present, although the acreage or level of infestation, I have no clue how.
I said it was small in the plan.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big concern. I just didn't know if anyone, I know a lot of the submergents are mostly native. So they weren't addressed. They certainly can't be addressed.
What do you think about curly pondleaf like purple loosestrife? Because you saw purple loosestrife when I got you going north. What do you think about that?
I don't think it would hurt to include it in here in the event that, we could get maybe some support for some releasing some beetles. I think DNR mostly self-funds that. A lot of times releasing the beetles, right? Did they ever ask for, I don't know if they ever asked for grant funds for that, but that would be a good suggestion to include in here.
So what is that called? Curly
Pondweed.
Pondweed.
Is that the one that the water tester is concerned about there?
I would assume that maybe it's more around by where the lanes are, those guys are probably bringing it in.
But there was one that was.
I was curious because there's Curly Pond.
Yeah, it's not professor now. He said there
Used to
was.
say this one.
Oh, yeah.
The duck seed it?
What school thing had the beetles growing? Wasn't that somebody's kids in school?
I don't recall that. I know we talked about it. They talked about it. You're talking about the
we
beetles?
had somebody actually do that.
They did do it, but I don't remember who it was.
It was somebody on the committee who had a kid that was a teacher
I don't remember.
at Lake Minnesuing or somewhere. Come on, you guys, don't remember.
I don't remember.
So what would we be spraying 230 for?
An aquatic approved roundup, so aquaneat most likely would be the trilby or rodeo.
That would be glyphosate then, not 240. I didn't know that.
I've never seen it.
Just to answer your question, I'd be supportive of adding these marginal invasives to the application. I feel like they strengthen our case. Some of the concern that we've gotten from Ted talking to him is you're going to go for this lake planning grant to help you get a handle on cattail, yet you want to go out for an invasive species control grant on cattail. Isn't that the cart before the horse? And our response to that is, no, we're building a base of knowledge with the pilot. So not exactly, but if we can also say, plus we're going to stomp out Phragmites before it becomes a real problem, and purple loosestrife, and curly leaf pondweed, I think it says, hey, sure, if you're, those are less cart before the horse things. Those are just, get rid of them, if you ask me.
And I use this funding cycle on Phragmites, the western part of Wisconsin without any sort of lake management plan in place. So this kind of track of funding is, in my mind, separate, can be viewed separately from the lake management plan. Maybe that's not how Ted is used to seeing it, but it's certainly how other regions do it.
Would there be a reason not to include those?
No, I don't think so. I think
Then we should
be
include them.
inclusive.
Sure.
It doesn't look like we're fishing then. Fishing for whatever funding, I don't know. It might just be like, oh, well, they have this problem, but now they're throwing this, that, and the other thing on there too.
I think that's pretty common everywhere. Where there's cattails and Phragmites, there's purple loosestrife, and they're all not too far away.
I look at it like, why'd you, if I were the department, I'd say, why'd you ask for money to take care of this when you got these 3 other little minor problems that we could have just taken care of for almost no money on top of it? So, it seems very worth the while.
I did write this to be a Rush Lake watershed plan. So I mentioned the lake plus the watershed in the event that we do want to, there's some Phragmites under the watershed that's really important to control. So maybe it's a source population, so that I want to make sure that option is available. We don't have to make that a priority, but in the event that we identify it as a priority, we'll have the means to be able to take care of it.
By the way, because I got nothing better to do, I'm reading Utica Town Board meeting agendas. Tom, I was reading this, and item 12 at meeting on Monday, discuss act on DNR Phragmites Control Program at parcel blah, 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 east of 6443 State Road 91, and I thought, I just mailed Tom his agenda to 6443 State Road 91.
Yeah, but that's east of 6443.
I know, it's right next to you.
Right next to
and
you.
it's like right on the border of the watershed, so I wonder what you guys might have going there, because there might be an opportunity to work together. I don't know. What do you know about it?
It's not on his land.
That's not on my land.
Yeah, but they're
And
your
that's
neighbor.
not, they're the neighbor, but that's not,
It's in the road ditch.
it's in the road ditch, and that's not even watershed that heads towards the Walk-Off Creek.
If it's right next, and if you get a north wind that's blowing seeds over the hill, you know, I'm not trying to solve everything everywhere, but because I took my little map that I superimposed over, and I was like, gee, it's not in it, but it's really close. It's right on the edge.
Frank Mighty's is coming fast, I would drive.
Yeah.
I expect.
I noticed it expanding westward really fast.
So I'll ask it if there's an opportunity to work together here, depending on what Utica has going
that's out
on.
of Green Bay. Yeah.
And that was, that wasn't anything the town of Utica did, it was just a notification.
Okay. And they just wanted the signed things that they could come in and take care of it.
And the DNR has grant funding through TLRI. They're treating Frank Mighty's in Winnebago County and the Fox River corridor.
Okay, so that's going to be, so just to make sure, not that we start marching off on what you're doing here, Melissa, and we talk to Ted about it, because I don't want to exclude something that we should include in a conversation. So just want to make sure, so your guys' view is it's already taken care of, not in the watershed, it's going to be fine, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's just part of their area that you notice that there's some there.
See more.
They wanted permission to come in and deal with it, and they can get it done.
Melissa, do you have any questions or anything? Okay. All right, fair enough. Thank you.
I'm not sure where they did anything or what they did.
What is are we going to meet the board to approve a final version or the subcommittee maybe?
Well, your view is we need to submit that just by December 1, so Ted has 60 days to do what he's got to do. We had spoken about the lake management plan on the phone just like a week or so ago, talking about looking to get the board to approve our lake management planning grant. So that's the other grant. That's the one where we study the lake and try and figure it out. Melissa's view is it's best if the board approves that before we submit it. That one has a deadline of December 9, and I want to schedule a meeting for Monday, November 30th, here to review that lake management plan and approve it for submission for the date, the lake management plan granting deadline. That's a special meeting that I'm calling based on how it's designated me in our bylaws.
What was the date?
Monday, November 30th. Going from memory, let me check my notes to make sure that that's right.
And that's to approve this plan, or that's to approve the grant application?
That's to approve the Lake Management Planning Grant Application.
Okay.
But if on November 30th we have this in final enough mode, we can approve this right after we do the Lake Management Plan, and then we send final this to Ted for the Invasive Species Grant, and we submit the Lake Management Planning Grant, which is due December 9.
We will need to submit board resolutions for both grants. And I highly recommend that you guys consider 2 planning grant applications. $25,000 goes really quick, especially if there's got to be a lot of education and outreach. So you can submit 2 separate grant applications. They need to have slightly different scopes. That could then provide up to $50,000.
Do we have to submit those now, or do we submit one now and one in 2019?
Submit both December 10th.
Okay. Well, that was what Ted expected based on our initial meeting that we met with Ted and Ellen.
So there'll be 2 separate grant applications. They have to have different scopes, but we need to kind of, and hopefully Ted can work with us to make sure that they're both pretty strong grant applications.
The picture,
and 2 separate resolutions.
I got you. There's a little information.
But my calendar says November 30th is Friday.
Well, let me check really quick. Yeah, that might be the day.
That's the Monday after Thanksgiving.
That's right. Monday the 26th. Everything I said about Monday the 30th is false. It's Monday the 26th. The town hall is free, and and that gives us a little wiggle room where if something's not working for us in the lake planning grant application, we've got a good week and a half to fix it. So we could punt it a week later to the first week of December, but if we've got some reservation, we're running out of time.
Brett, is that open to the public?
I'll be off that 26th. That's a good day for me.
I don't see why it wouldn't be open to the public. I'd post it on the Facebook page and everything. I mean, it's ultimately, the conclusion of the meeting should be the culmination of everything we've worked for this year. At a minimum, if we get one grant, that's the one that we'll get.
Now, what are these timelines? I was under the impression one of these had to be in by the 1st of December.
December 10th is the deadline for the planning grant application. And then what this will support, the control of cattail, that grant application is due February 1st. But this needs to be done in advance.
Ted needs it by 2 months prior, right?
Correct. So this needs to be submitted to him by December 10th so that he can approve it. And
December
then
10th.
We'll be
Okay.
December 1st. And then we'll be eligible to apply for that grant.
So one has to be in by December 1st?
This has to be in by December 1st.
All right.
So either way, we get this invasive species plan, which we need to have done by December 1, approved on November 26th, right. Monday the 26th?
Yes.
Monday the 26th. And we also approved the Lake Management Planning Grant Applications, which are 2 grants for $25,000 apiece, which have us doing planning activities in the lake in 2019 and 2020.
I just wanted to get the timeline down, that's all.
Mm-hmm. So if nobody has any reservations on this, what I expect is going to happen, and Melissa, correct me where I might be wrong, you and Aaron are working this document actively. I would venture to guess you're not adding a ton of detail to it.
No, not really. I mean, and I haven't even had anyone internally review it, so it needs to go through internal review. I'll add those 2 different species, so you may see minor changes. Then we should get it in front of Ted, and hopefully he doesn't steer us in a different direction.
Sure. And Ted gave us that feedback earlier, like he needs to have it by that December 1 date so he can do his, review. But before then, he can give us pep talk probably isn't the right word, but give us pep talks where we need it to modify this to make it more appropriate or better or something.
Typically, they'll review a draft.
Yeah.
We'll get comments and I'll incorporate any comments he has.
Can I throw one little thing in? We talk about the redneck grebe and all of that stuff. And the thing is when we were going through this, my understanding was the reason we were getting more redneck grebes on Rush Lake before we did the drawdown was because everything was so open. And that was the reason that you drew more of those species of grebe there. Well, now considering the amount of vegetation we have out there, I wonder whether we even have any grebes out there, redneck grebes out there now.
Oh, yeah.
There are?
Oh, yeah. In the NRDA grant application, we wrote in a wildlife monitoring survey, so we'll do some bird surveys.
And actually, there was some, are they American grebes? The big ones?
Yeah.
They're like the size of a mallard almost.
Yeah.
There was a flock of those out there.
Oh, wow.
The ones where the head looks like a grebe and the body looks like a duck?
Yeah, but
they're different yet too. Okay.
No, their head looks like a grebe, their body looks like a duck, but their wings are like a grebe too.
Yeah.
They're big. American grebe, I think, Helen?
I don't know. I don't have my bird book with me. I'm supposed to know all this, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But you could check with like the Oshkosh Audubon and see if they're doing any bird counts out there. I'm pretty sure somebody does.
Those things aren't from around here. Those are that American grebe. They come from prairies, I think.
Well, those are western grebes then. aren't they?
They're big.
They're big, yeah. Saw them out in North Dakota. They're awesome.
That's good.
Okay. Well, so if no objections, the course of action on this invasive species plan is Melissa and Stantec will do their wrapping up of the document. Melissa and I will be meeting with Ted Johnson hopefully in the next couple of weeks to get this in front of him and start getting feedback to enhance the document. And then we as a board will be getting that before our more than 8 hours before our November 26th meeting, Monday, to review, and we'll be voting on it at that meeting.
Do you need a subcommittee to meet for anything?
Subcommittee can meet on that.
If needed.
Because
I think there's subcommittee should have some involvement in defining the scope of those two management planning grants.
Absolutely, because we don't want to see that for the first time at that meeting. So absolutely for the Lake Management Planning Grant. I think for this one, how about, Melissa, when you've got it, I'll just circulate that to subcommittee, which are the three guys sitting right there, Doug, Art, Seth, and I, Gary also, and say review what Stantec's prepared, and if nothing, then we'll put it in front of Ted and see what he's got to say about it. And then based on his comments, we'll come back at it like how NRDA gave us comments, and we reviewed their comments and chimed in for Stantec to update the application. Feel okay? Okay, so we'll do that, and the subcommittee will meet on to make sure both are progressing. One comment on all the grants. So we talk about we applied for the NRDA grant. We're applying for a lake management planning grant with the DNR. We're applying for an aquatic invasive species control grant with the DNR. What we're talking about is project work that's going to be happening in 2019, 2020, and 2021 on the lake to study the lake to better understand our cattail problem and our opportunity to enhance their situation, but also to conduct the pilot program on the lake, to do some of those smaller scale testing to see what kind of results we can get, which feeds the approved lake management plan. And over the course of the 3 years, the total project is going to cost roughly $185,000, 75 of which is the lake management plan. $110,000 is the aquatic invasive species pilot. In a world where we win all these grants, the amount of grant match that we have to shoulder, it might not be anything. Later this month, we're going to be meeting with universities, Fox Valley Technical College, UW Oshkosh. They have an environmental research and innovation center lab, ERIC lab. We're meeting with the professor who's in charge of that. And also Melissa has connections with Ripon College. So if we have an eager university partner to put their student time or management effort in for us, that all counts as match. So that's pretty good. So the answer could be it doesn't really cost anything at all. We really won't know until we find out from NRDA in the next month whether they're giving us a grant or not. And we won't know on the last pieces until the DNR answers our grant applications for the lake management planning and aquatic invasive species, which we'll find out in the first quarter of 2019. On the money side, there is I'll get to that in a second. But I want to continue on partner identification because I talked about scholarly. So we have the three universities in the fray. Last time we worked with Ripon College and Oshkosh. Fox Valley Tech is new but has some unique capability, some of which can be on the burn side, which we're doing more evaluation on. And once we get a little bit of clarity on the universities, we'll be following up with high school connections to see if there's a volunteer opportunity there for students in a science class or whatever to fill in the blanks on things. From an ecological standpoint, last week Melissa and I met with Brian Glenzinski, Ducks Unlimited. They're willing to provide some technical support to help guide the project as we go. But as far as contributing money, not at this time with this round of grant applications. Depending on what does or doesn't happen with grant awards, they might be willing to make a contribution. So more to come. Brian did discuss some matters of burning with us, which we'll get to a little bit later as it relates to the Swamp Devil. So I'm going to come back to that one because that's something that Doug and Art have both spent some time working on. Funding. So as far as funding needed, starting with the bigger parties, we're applying for grants. That's a big hunk of money. We talked to organizations like Ducks Unlimited. And then from there going down the chain. So Tuesday, Nepeuskun had their town budget workshop, and I attended the meeting and made a request for a contribution to support our project and spoke about it a little bit. Given that all the towns in the watershed have representation on the board, the view of the subcommittee was we should be asking the towns for money. So to see what their level of interest in supporting the project is, at least at this stage. So what I did, the feedback I received at Town of Nepeuskun was draft a letter making a formal request, and I've done such a letter, which I don't know, I haven't sent it to anybody. It's addressed to you, Ron, but you haven't seen this yet. And I could read that, but ultimately, I was reading your Town of Utica agenda to find out when your guys' budget workshop might be, because I thought, well, if Nepeuskун's having theirs, I bet Utica's having theirs soon. I know it's next week, Tuesday, is that right, Chuck? I'd love to make it, but I'm away, so I'd love for you to make a request on behalf of the organization, and this letter I can send with you to help make that plea, if that's okay. Town of Ripon, I've already talked to Gary. He's a supervisor. He'll be carrying the same kind of request to their budget workshop. And Town of Rushford, I'm not sure when their budget workshop is, but I think it's a few weeks out, later this month or early November. So my plan was I was going to go to the next town board meeting, which didn't have their budget workshop identified, but it's earlier than they've had their budget hearings. So at that meeting, at least I can voice the comment at Rushford. So I can read this letter just to make sure everybody feels comfortable with it, if that's okay. Because if you are, then I'll give these to Chuck to take on Tuesday, and then I'll give these to Ron for Nepeuskun. One page. Everyone okay if I just read this? Sure. All right. Both read the same. So it's dated today on funding request, Rush Lake Management Plan project. So notice I key it towards the Rush Lake Management Plan, not the pilot or the invasive species control. This is just understanding the lake. Dear gentlemen, Rush Lake is a 3,070-acre deep water prairie pothole marsh in southwest Winnebago County and northwest Fond du Lac County, Wisconsin. Rush Lake is named for the extensive beds of hardstem bulrush that were once predominant. It is the largest prairie pothole east of the Mississippi River and is home to a multitude of wetland birds, including several threatened and endangered species. During the second half of the 20th century, conditions on Rush Lake had deteriorated so much that a major restoration initiative was needed. That restoration was completed 10 years ago. The goals set forth for the first restoration were largely achieved. Those achievements are easily observed through sizable improvements in water clarity and quality, wildlife habitat, the fishery, and aquatic vegetation. While aquatic vegetation is much improved over what was present just 15 years ago, this subject still presents us great opportunity. Seed bank studies in 1993 indicated that the seed bank on average was 68% hardstem bulrush. Regrowth following a 2-year drawdown was expected to mirror this. Unfortunately, quantifiable acreage of hardstem bulrush in 2008 approximated pre-drawdown amounts, and 462 point intercept sample locations, 59% of which could not be reached due to, quote, non-navigable dense cattail beds. A lake management plan was completed prior to the initial restoration, but it could not address the vegetative response that occurred as a result of the drawdown in 2006 and 2007. Now by December 9th, 2018, we'll apply for $25,000 grant with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, which will address what the prior plan could not. This grant will require a match from Rush Lake Watershed Restoration, Inc. or other partner organizations. The amount of match is expected to approximate $12,500. Rush Lake Watershed Restoration, Inc. kindly requests your support in this initiative and appreciates your consideration of providing us with financial assistance. Your financial support will be put to good use and is impactful. It will help inventory, monitor, and document conditions on Rush Lake and in the watershed. These activities will help us understand why there is vigorous cattail growth at the expense of preferred native species and desirable hemi-marsh conditions, which are beneficial to wildlife and the public. The resulting lake management plan will open up avenues for implementation grants with the Wisconsin DNR, as well as grant funding from other significant partners such as the Fox River Natural Resource Damage Assessment and Ducks Unlimited. We expect to receive notice in early 2019 that we will receive grant support from the Wisconsin DNR. At that time, we will begin developing the lake management plan. In discussions with the Wisconsin DNR, due to the complexities of the Rush Lake watershed, we expect that a second $25,000 lake management planning grant will be needed and that the broader plan will be finalized by mid-2021. Once finalized, Rush Lake Watershed Restoration, Inc. will begin driving towards the broader implementation activities on Rush Lake and in the watershed. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the proposed project. Rush Lake Watershed Restoration and I would like to assist you in any way possible through this decision-making process. We greatly appreciate your consideration and support. I can be reached at 920-915-7932 or at brett.helmbrecht@gmail.com. Sincerely yours, Brett Helmbrecht, President Director, Rush Lake Watershed Restoration, Inc. Okay. So I have those for the town of Utica and the town of Nepeuskun. I've got 3 copies for chairman and the 2 supervisors in each town. You send that, Chuck? Thank you, Chuck. And I'll get the same document out to Gary for him to take to town of Ripon, and also I'll be getting the same in at town of Rushford. Okay, so requests of towns is where we can request funds and what we just talked about. Other groups and organizations, that's like the Webster's Foundation. On that one, I'd love to talk with them about it. Where the subcommittee left off, I was going to talk with Melissa to see if she had a connection there with the Webster Foundation, and she did not. Wonder if anybody in this room is connected enough to say I can open that door with the Webster Foundation to have the conversation, or if I should just wander down to Webster's and ask nice and see who I can talk to about it. What do you guys think?
I think you should call down there and set up a meeting with Candy to start with.
And I got a feeling she'll be very open to it.
Yeah.
Candy Baker,
yeah.
Kenny Merck was talking with her one day quite a bit, so I don't know if he's got a closer relationship with her.
Not anymore, at least.
Oh, okay.
Not may have once upon a time.
Okay, well I just saw him down here earlier this year talking with her one day.
And I think a lot of things have changed.
Okay.
With Ken also for now, so
okay.
You'd probably be better off going the other route.
Okay.
Just dealing straight with Candy, so.
Okay. I'll give it a shot. So beyond groups and organizations, that there's an outreach component here too. For instance, this is today's Ripon Commonwealth. If you turn to page 6, you would see an article. Southwoods Park Association will hold fall banquet October 18th. One of Doug's contacts reached out to Doug and said, hey, we're looking for a guest speaker. Rush Lake's pretty interesting. Could you guys put someone up? Doug's out elk hunting, but I'm happy to present. So I'm the feature speaker at the Southwoods Park Association. So maybe there are other organizations that come out of the woodwork along the way. Read the paper. The tickets to the dinner are $18. You get a nice meal, and you get to hear me talk, which I'm sure everyone will have their fill after tonight. So organizations, maybe more come out of the woodwork. If you have any bright ideas, please raise them to the subcommittee. Seth, you brought one forward. I forget the backcountry.
Backcountry.
Yep. So if anybody has any ideas, please present them.
So are you asking the counties to?
The County Land and Water Commission I think we probably should have a conversation with them anyways on the stream sampling standpoint, just based on what Dave was telling me yesterday, and I'd love to go there. Does anybody have I know Bernie used to be on the Land and Water Commission, but
My nephew is.
your nephew is? What do you want to do? Because I'd love to talk to him, Doug, but if you want to set the table or... Okay. Okay. That sounds great. Good idea, Kevin. And then after we get past organizations as the project develops, then we could start knocking on doors, so to speak. You know, I'd walk up and down Island Road talking to guys who are hunting and say, hey, we could use a donation and help, but it's an easier conversation to have if we could say, yeah, we have at least one grant in hand. So if NRDA develops nicely and we get word in the beginning of November that we've got a grant going, it's a much easier conversation. So, start with the bigger fish and work our way down depending on the way the project unfolds.
I wonder whether or not you could get an insert when the tax bills go out or something like that, where those that have personal pride, the shacks and that kinds of stuff, maybe be able to send something out there, or at least get that mailing list and send a separate letter.
Ron, what do you think about Rush Lake Watershed piggybacking on the town's mailing and putting something in there?
You send them a tax bill, and at the same time you're asking for more money.
Yeah.
That's my reaction. Honestly,
I know.
Hell, let's try it.
well, yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? Pay that, not
Perhaps in the town of Nepeuskun newsletters, we can stress the desire for donations.
We did in the last one.
Yeah, well, you wrote it. Yeah,
okay. Worked it in.
I don't know. We could look at it.
Have you guys had any conversations about making this a lake district, which then your residents get taxed? That money gets then used for lake improvement projects.
Don't even know how to go about that.
Yeah, Jerry Trochinsky mentioned to me the other night, the place we got the oxygen sensor from, they're a sanitary district. He said, you don't need to have a sewer system to be a sanitary district. You can just call yourself that. It's like, okay, well, whatever. I don't know. My guess is we crossed this bridge back when we did the original restoration, and I'm personally not all that interested because it seems like a lot of effort that, maybe we can do this off of goodwill and partnership instead of the hand of taxation. That's just my personal opinion on it.
At the very beginning of this project, the Lake District was mentioned, and it was kind of a short discussion, and the consensus was no. You remember that, Ellen?
Probably very, very similar to today.
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but I would agree that would have been what was decided.
We pay enough taxes, we don't want to pay any more.
Years ago, when we lived in Muskego, we weren't anywhere near, big Muskego Lake and that. Man, it was a district and we got nailed for it all the time.
All of a sudden we're a bad guy.
And it's like, yeah, and it's, yeah.
I did talk to my friend that knows the president of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and he's pretty busy at the moment with some bigger fish, so to speak, but he did say that he was going to send me the contact information for their Wisconsin State chapter, and so I should be getting that anytime so I can hopefully talk to them.
Yeah, those are all things as that develops, if once it materializes, those are great subcommittee topics too. Okay, so I guess that's on the funding side, and just overall standpoint on the funding is, in the view of the subcommittee, was we're going to need money. Money's not going to not be a need. And I was at the Green Lake County Fair, and there was a booth at the fair for the Grand Lake Improvement District, which Kingsford Milfond, I think, and their annual fundraising target that they put up is about it's over 16,000. That's their annual target to serve as DNR match for invasive species control in Kingston Mill Pond. So, so they're, other groups like ours are doing it, and they're doing it with, we haven't raised 16 grand since before the restoration, and we might come a time where we say, let's go for a bigger fundraiser, but I don't know that we need to plan for that today, given that there's too many unknowns in our equation right now.
Yeah.
So, as far as outreach goes, looking to continue things like, the South Park Woods, brat fries, vines and rushes, that was, they had that fundraiser night for us, so, looking to utilize those as much as we can to help build awareness in addition to what we're doing right now, because the more people know about it. Like, for instance, Ken Merck owns Island Air Road, and everybody who has property on it pays him for the road bill every year. And I helped them do the road bill this year, and I asked really nice, would you guys mind if I wrote a letter to everybody on the road that said, I'm your neighbor and I'm on the road, and here's what we got going on the lake. So I sent them a letter saying, we've got something going on here. We don't quite know what it is yet, but if we get everything we're thinking about, we're going to be doing stuff on the lake next year, and here's how you can help. And it's, you can come to meetings, you can donate money. Oh, you couldn't make a meeting? That's okay. We post the audio online. We post pictures and stuff on the Facebook page. Like us on Facebook, so if we post something, it'll notify you and maybe your friends too. So it was kind of a simple introduction, and just from sending out that letter, we got like 10 new likes on Facebook, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 10 more people see the message when I send out. We're at 99 likes right now. So so whatever that's worth, it's 10 more people hear the stuff happening, and hopefully it can be kind of a snowball. Yeah. Okay. So the last thing on the Lake Grant application discussion is just risks, needs or risks. There's we did a survey in the last grant, with the last lake management plan. That was something I've communicated to Ted that we could accelerate that and do that ahead, and if it helps us score well on the grant application, we could go out and get it done this year. His view is whenever you do it, you'll do it. So if our conversations with them, they got excited about wanting to do a grant or do a survey before that invasive species grant, maybe we would look to get the ball rolling on that, but there's nothing happening on it as of today. That's something where there is grant money to pay for that. It's built into the grant programs to do that stuff. As far as funding, these are reimbursable grants. So I said before, if everything happens like we think, it could be a $185,000 project over the next 3 years, and basically all of it could be paid for with grants or in-kind support. But ultimately, we need to provide the funding for that up front, and we get reimbursed from it by our grant partners once the work is completed. So Doug helped open the door. Seth mentioned too, Farmers and Merchants helped them with their snowmobile club. So Doug and I have met with Farmers and Merchants Bank. We're in conversations with them to see if there's ways to work together. Brian Glodzinski also mentioned too that Ducks Unlimited can help provide funding, because they have instances where people get grants, but the grant organization isn't, they're not confident with grant administration because they deal with people who don't do this every day. So that's where Ducks Unlimited basically plays banker, but they don't necessarily do much else in the project, and they charge you interest like a bank would. So we've at least got 2 potential partners in the works, because that's one where if we didn't have a financing solution, the project could be sunk even with grant awards, because we have no way to put the money up front, even though it'll get reimbursed in totality on the back end. So that's a need, and we're working that.
So I have to ask a question. How do they borrow your money? They're hedging that the grant comes through?
They need, in talking with Farmers and Merchants, they're very, and the other banks I talked to before them who weren't interested in it at all, said, let's talk about assignability and using that grant award as collateral. Because their underwriters can get comfortable with, yes, you've received a grant award, the grant paperwork makes us feel sufficiently comfortable that that grant is going to happen, then they'll make the loan just like you get a mortgage on your house and the house secures the mortgage.
Construction loan, maybe.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So a risk on the money side is an overall grant shortfall. My background, I'm a CPA, so I just love fiddling with numbers and trying to solve for X. Taking what we have in the works right now on the grant applications and what we've got yet to come with the Lake Management Planning Grant, as it currently stands, with no additional support receipts. But if we go out and win the awards we get, we're going to have to pay around $7,000 out of pocket to make the project happen. That's if nothing else happens, but we get these big grant awards that we're talking about. So it's something that it would pretty much exhaust the Treasury. But if we got the awards and nobody wanted to play ball anywhere with us, we could make it happen, but we'd be out of money by the time the project's done in 2 years. If we only got the DNR Aquatic Invasive Species Grant, so the NRDA grant didn't happen, and the DNR Invasive Species Grant didn't happen, we'd be looking at 10 grand at least for this next year. And actually the 7,000 was this next year, the footprint for next year. It's not in totality, it's next year. Sorry about that. So if only the aquatic invasive species, if only the DNR Lake Management Planning Grant happened, it'd be about $10,000 that we'd have to shoulder out of pocket next year, which would exhaust the Treasury, because your Treasurer's report was 10 and change, and we resolved for 14 to 18 for lake sampling, which granted would count, but either way, we're on fumes next year. If we got NRDA, which funds in the bulk of the pilot program, but also some of that money also funds the Lake Management Planning Grant, because if you're studying the plants for the control pilot, it also counts for studying it for the lake planning. But we don't get the DNR Aquatic Invasive Species Grant, which is the Ted Johnson support thing that we need to work on with him soon and get that in by December 1. We would have a significant hole. Then that would be north of $50,000. So that's where we could find ourselves winning an award for, the NRDA grant is in the neighborhood of $75,000, $72,780. We could find out that we won that award in a couple weeks. But if we don't get that last DNR grant, we would have a hole of $50K that we'd have to try and solve for. Or we'd have a problem by having grant funds for a project that we don't have an adequate match for. But again, that's a big hole, assuming nothing else happens. None of the universities want to work with us. We don't get any donations, whatever. So that's where, through talking with Fox Valley Tech, Oshkosh Ripon, if they make what we've got going on out here a significant part of a real thing, like the professors who had helped us before, that'll really help fix that number. And it just gets to, there are too many holes right now, but in a worst case scenario, we're short 50,000. And we won't know the answer on that until February.
Matrix showing this, then this, then this.
There's like too many of those right now. I could do that matrix like reasonably well around Thanksgiving, but like right now, if I did it, it would just make your head spin.
I like numbers too.
Because if you're like trying to figure out, like what the Packers' playoff chances are, if Rodgers' other knee goes and all that other stuff.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe it'd be better to use the Brewers, but to win the World Series.
And we can revisit NRDA. If we don't get a DNR contribution to that, we can go back to them and say we didn't get the match. Can we revise the scope? They'll work with us.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure it out. We'll cross a bridge when we get there. But it's a risk to the project. If we win all 3 grants, things are much rosier than if we win only 1 or 2 of the grants of the 3. And we'll know more as we go. And as something, you can bet if we get a letter that says, congratulations, you've won this NRDA grant, that'll be something I'll be on the horn calling everybody about. Say, hey, we got this first one and here's what it means and where we go from here.
Sounds good.
So, okay. We talked about fundraisers at the last meeting in the context of a Green Bay Packer fundraiser. I went up to that information night, and what it came down to is you need to commit your organization to at least half a season. And they don't care who comes each week. It could be a different group of people every week, but you need to commit to half of the games, which is roughly like 6 because they count preseason and family night and stuff. So that's particularly challenging, which made it a non-starter for this year. Because it's a real time commitment. Day of, you have to be there 3 hours early, and you have to count cash and reconcile inventory and everything afterwards. So you're there 2 hours after. So you're leaving home at like 6 a.m. and you're home at like 7 p.m. for a noon game. But the money's good, but you need to dedicate a lot of time to it, and you need people to show up. And even their small scale things like a little push cart that has beers in it or something, you need 2 to 4 people to work it. And I struggle to think, what 2 to 4 people can I get to give up 6 of their Sundays this fall to do it? And based on just looking around this room and guessing what everybody has going on Sundays, it sounded like there are better opportunities to raise money elsewhere in a way that aren't as invasive for everything we've got going on. But one of the items that they brought up is if you're going to do it, you need to carry general liability insurance to cover your organization in case there's some, I don't even know what, but the food service company requires it. I don't know really the value of insurance as it relates to a nonprofit organization like ours, but what I'd like to do is have some more information on that for that special meeting on November 26th to cover off on what we may want to do, given that we may be doing some significant projects on the lake. Because, there's general liability, which sounded like could be good to have if you're doing things like a brat fry in case someone gets sick. But I don't really know what it covers. I buy insurance because I just feel naked without it. I want to know what I'm actually buying because I fully expect if I have a claim that I won't just receive a check, that I'll be challenged on it and I'll need to explain myself 6 ways till Sunday. So I'd like to present more information on insurance policies that may be applicable to us at that meeting, given that we've got significant undertakings happening. We might be doing a pilot in all these spots, and if we're out there and we've got students from Fox Valley Tech and Ripon High School and we're with them, is there something we need to be thinking about from a risk management standpoint?
Students should all be insured through the school, we think. But on the risks, I think it would be talk to an attorney. Because what are they going to sue you for?
I don't know, people name everybody in lawsuits now.
But that really is, we talk to an attorney at the same time as an insurance man.
Yeah, well, I did talk to an attorney, and that comes to my other risk. And my wife and I, we updated our wills just because we had a second kid and we hadn't looked at our wills in a long time. And I talked to him. I said, hey, we've got this initiative that's happening out here. I'm the president of this group. We're going to be starting this project. I don't know we expect everything's going to go great, but let's assume something bad happens out there. We're incorporated. We're a 501c3. Do I have to worry about anything? And he said, you should talk to an insurance guy to see what they have to say. But he said, but because you're incorporated, that's your protection, so long as you're following your bylaws. And I said, well, there's room for improvement on that. And I don't want to talk about bylaws tonight, but also at that November 26th meeting, at the end, after we talk about approving this and approving the lake management planning grants, then we talk about bylaws, and maybe that's where we have John Blazel at the meeting to say, hey, when we structured the group back when, here's how we wrote the bylaws, and here's kind of the way to think about modifying them. Because here's why I care about the bylaws from that. I'm less than excited to be the tip of the spear of everything that we have going on. If something goes wrong, and somebody says, I'm naming Stantec, I'm naming the DNR because you guys cut the permit, I'm naming Rush Lake Watershed Restoration so I can get your $10,000 in the treasury, and I'm naming the president because he's the leader of this operation, and all the other directors too. The thing that worries me is I don't want to find out, like what my attorney said is your risk is low, that you're going to wind up having something bad happen, but I don't want to find out the hard way, right? So if the one thing that could shake our protection as a corporation is bylaw adherence, let's just do the blocking and tackling to make sure we're adhering to the bylaws. That's all I really care about on it. So agenda for November 26th. Grant application approvals, insurance review, bylaws, and we could have John Blazel there to help us think through it. He did them the last time. I've never met him. What do you guys think about having an attorney present or just kind of arm wrestling it out ourselves as a starting point? I don't know.
John is fine. My opinion.
Would you guys expect that he would come here, and donate his time to help us think through it. He hasn't really billed us in the past. I think we had one small bill when we revised the bylaws in 12 to add the independent director position, but it was tiny.
I can't speak for him, but I would guess he would. We could contact him.
Who would you suggest should contact him, Doug? Would you do that, please?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So that concludes the needs and risks section of the grant application discussion. So there's a last item on it for open discussion on the grant applications. Is there anything we haven't thoroughly explored at this time that we should talk about further on the grants? If not, we'll move on to other updates. First is the South Pier update. Seth, Ellen, do you have anything? I see there's no pier down there, but I wonder if you guys have a pulse on what might be happening.
Yes.
Would you like
Yeah,
to?
no engineer. John Olson retired in December. I think when John Olson retired, he gave that project to another engineer, and I think then that engineer may have retired. Because when I called in August to talk to John about it, I got the voicemail that I retired in December, call this person. So I called this person, and I said, I don't know what's worse, the fact that I'm calling in August and he retired in December or January, and I didn't know that, or that I'm calling in August and I don't know what's happening with my project. So the project's sitting there waiting for an engineer.
Okay.
Period.
All right.
It's not happening this fall.
That makes sense.
Everything will be fine.
That's fine. Just it's an exciting update, and thank you for updating us.
But when I did talk to the man that told me that John Olson left on good terms, he just decided that he was going to retire, because you get to a point where if all the numbers come up, you just go. I'm kind of mad that he didn't call me and tell me that, but okay, it might have been not fair that day. I said I've got several projects that are now stuck because there are no engineers, so I ranked them for him. And there's one ahead of Rush Lake that we've waited even longer for. So, but I think once we get these engineers up and running, this will get done. So we have the money to do it. We just don't have the engineer to get it done.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Okay.
No, I don't know why John Olson, I mean, he's an engineer. He probably had 50 different things going on. And he probably said to the engineer, you take these, you take these, you take these. And I think what happened is whoever took these, then they retired and they're like, well, but I'm just making that part up.
It happens. It happens everywhere.
It's not done.
I left Alliance a year ago, and I'm sure that stuff happened too. And people, why did Brett do this to me?
Sorry.
I don't know. I didn't try. It just happened. So sorry. That's fine.
At the end of the day, the landing's still there, and people can still launch their boat.
Yeah, thanks to guys pulling dogs out.
Yeah,
okay, thanks, Ellen. Okay, so fundraising and outreach in other updates. October 18th, so that's next week, Thursday. South Park Woods Association, I talked about that before. See Ripon Commonwealth, or check out their Facebook page. They should have information on that there. Fundraising, we talked about a little bit before. We could do something bigger, but there's too many there's too many open variables right now to try and do anything bigger. So, we could go out and get our raffle license back and things like that, but I think maybe we just wait on that one. If anybody has any other thoughts on fundraising beyond doing status quo, I'd love to hear it, but probably next year look to do Webster's again. Happy to go down there and wait in line on, what's it, the first of the... Second, January 2nd, 7 a.m. is that?
Probably.
Whatever, I'll ask at the front desk. And I'll ask for a Saturday near, but on the 4th of July weekend, because the year before we had it, I think the weekend before. Last year we had it the weekend after, so I'll ask for a Saturday similar if everyone's comfortable with Brat Fry again next year, about the same time frame. Okay, we'll do it. One other idea I thought of that would be kind of nifty is, there's a lot of action on the ice in winter. And I thought, I could take my folding table down there and pull it out on a sled, and I could put my Rush Lake information table out on the ice, and I could wheel my grill out there. And I could do a Rush Lake watershed brat fry on the ice.
I was kind of thinking about something like that right on the boat landing.
Yeah.
A little tent or a little shack or something.
I think you might have to have a permit from your township.
What if I'm on the ice, though?
I think you have to have a permit from your township.
I can probably get
What is
it.
I don't think you can just go sell stuff.
I don't think so, but, kids sell lemonade, and I'm kind of like that.
No, you are not.
No?
Nobody's daughter is.
Well, so can we talk to Gary about that? And I'm supposed to talk to him the next day or two, because I got to get him some of the materials for tonight, so I'll work it in. Because if there's a way where it's like, sure, go for it. Like, that sounds like a fun morning, because I just love talking to people about this stuff. So, it'd be easy, and it'd be a couple bucks, but the outreach component's more important to me than the $80 I'd probably make selling 20 brats, so.
Pretty much any place open.
Okay, so if nobody has any objection, I'm going to pursue that with Gary and go. Vines and Rushes, they were very kind to us by having us at their information or their Cause of the Mondays event. They shared with us that, that we'd be welcome to come back. Just let them know what we're thinking. And my view is that it'd be great to go back, probably in spring after we have clarity on these grant awards, so we can speak clearly about we have this award, and that means this can happen, and our fundraising goal is this amount of money or something like that, because it's actually a clear project at that point. If everyone's comfortable with that, I'll talk to Ryan Prowitz and gauge his level of interest in having us back in kind of the March time frame, which is when they had us out last year. Okay.
April will find out from the DNR on the established population control grant.
Okay, so I'd talk to Ryan for late April or May kind of thing. Okay, so I'll talk there. Webster's Foundation, we talked about that before, and be talking to them about, like with the towns, talking to them about helping support us on the lake management plan. Because if all the grant applications fail but one, our best odds are on receiving that one, and it's the one that gets us traction to go for more grant money later. So I'll be talking to them about that. Newspapers, we've been covered in the press in the past. Berlin Journal did an article on us last year. Ripon Commonwealth did articles over the year. Oshkosh Northwestern, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I could start talking to papers and talking to them about stuff, but until the project develops a little bit more, I'd kind of just say sit tight. And once we get some awards, that sounds like an article they could write. Rush Lake Watershed receives grant of X from this organization, and here's what it means. But if we did get that award, would you guys be comfortable if I talked to the two local ones for starters, Ripon and Berlin?
Sure. Well, do you send press releases out?
Not usually.
Like something that, you send them out to all the media. Just hit everybody up. You can talk to local media.
Yeah.
But just send them out to as many people as possible. Our story, we send it out when the grants come in.
Northwestern would probably be a good one.
Most papers will they pick that stuff up because it's feel-good stuff.
Half of them are linked together now. They're in the same USA Today News Network, so if it's in Appleton, it's in
Conley or whoever.
Right. So I don't know. I'm happy to issue press releases to these news organizations as a start, and if they want to, I would look to have a more personal touch with Berlin and and talk to them.
Absolutely.
But the bigger ones, I'm happy to jot down a 3-paragraph press release and make sure it's satisfactory to our grant partners. Because it's like I did that stuff at Alliance, drafted the press releases whenever we issued quarterly earnings. So if everyone's okay with that, I'll do that.
You do the work for them; it's easier for them to print it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it negatively. It's just it's cut and paste.
It's a start.
Right.
It's a good start, and then they can tinker with it from there. Okay, so I'll do as appropriate with press releases if we get something sizable, and if we do get something sizable, I'll be talking to you all before I would issue a press release anyways. And then here's one. Facebook offers nonprofits fundraising events through Facebook, and they don't charge you like a fee. Like ordinarily, say we take a cut of like 5% or something like that. But I've gotten all this information from them saying like, hey, you should really use this Facebook function, probably so that they can collect information about who donates to what cause, and they sell it to some advertiser or whatever, whatever Facebook does. But curious if you guys would be interested or would allow me to do something like that in the name of our organization, specifically for this. I'm running a marathon 1 month from today, and I would just put it out, and all my nerd friends on Facebook would read it, and, I'd get a couple bucks from, people who would never sit in one of these meetings or listen to the podcast, but it helps build awareness, and, maybe some other people would give to it. And I don't know what I would put on it for a target goal, because they ask you to ask for a certain amount of money, but I would put it on the running for Rush Lake or something, and put, Rush Lake's president's running a marathon and build awareness for Rush Lake and stuff and whatever. What do you guys think about that? Because it could be viewed as hokey and a distraction, or it could be, no, it sounds like a great opportunity to get the word out and maybe raise a few bucks too.
It couldn't hurt.
It can't hurt. Any more is better, because you don't know who you're going to bump into. Somebody out there's got, like you said, we want to connect with people.
Well, there's a negative side to Facebook.
Yeah, that's what I worry about a little bit.
Really, I'm not familiar with.
It's negative enough, I shut it right off.
It can be.
Yeah.
They can. Depending upon how I don't know, I've never heard of this nonprofit.
You risk someone coming back with a negative, coming back negative on you very publicly on Facebook.
Well, poison, in other words.
That's the only negative.
I mean, you can be all positive,
probably
but you can't control all
60-40 negative to positive on Facebook.
It could be viewed too, it's like, oh, well, Brett's, how do I know the money actually gets to Rush Lake Watershed? Well, I'd be like, well, it's...
Look at Brett got a new boat.
Yeah. So, I don't want it to be like that, I mean, that's the, well, honestly, like, I asked the guy for permission, to collect water in Henderson Creek, because I crossed, Richard Swiderski's property to collect it. And I asked him, like, oh, could I collect it? And I said, yeah, I'm your neighbor. I'm down the road in the house. He's like, the brick house? Like, oh, the DNR pays you too much. I'm like, oh, I don't work for the DNR. Do it. So, comments like that happen, and I don't want negative comments to distract from whatever. So, maybe I'd get friends and relatives and other local people, like,
if you can make it private somehow.
Well, you know what I'll do? I'll just make it, if I can make it private, that's easy, because I just send it to my friends and say, hey, all you people, I'm doing this.
And they can send it to their friends.
Yeah, and you can send it to your friends, and you know what you can do? You cut a check out to Rush Lake Watershed Restoration, Inc. And it'll get deposited. And send it to Todd Thalen so I never see the money.
Then I get a new boat.
Yeah, but they'll tell me that they sent the money.
Right.
So I'll do it like that. I'll just nag people personally and see where it goes.
This is on YouTube.
Yep. That was a joke. What did I say? Yeah, I said I will nag my friends, like my friend who just moved to Florida, and said I would give money to that. So, Dave, I hope you're listening, because you owe me.
Wait a minute, you're running a marathon?
Yeah, I'm running a marathon. That was the first thing I said.
You could hold a bunch of cattails while you run.
Yeah. No, I did get that first thing, but I have to ask you that.
Yeah, I'm trying to put the website on my shirt, but I think it's going to peel off, so I'm trying to find a way to get it on there, which probably won't make a difference. But
you can have a shirt made for you.
No, I know, but marathon, whatever. I'll tell you after the meeting. Okay, so anyways, I'll do that, but privately, so it doesn't spin out of control and be an embarrassment. Okay. Special meeting, Monday, November 26th, here at 7 o'clock. Doug's going to talk to John Blaisdell to see if he would attend and help us think through bylaw updates and risks of non-compliance with bylaws, and to make sure we're covered there. And then that concludes the other updates section, and now we're on to public input and other matters if there aren't any other updates to go along with other updates. Okay, it's 9:20 or so we'll try and go quickly. Carp monitoring this winter. Seth, you're living down there now. you're gonna be taking a peek at what's going on?
Yep, I drive down there I'm at the boat landing almost every day anyway.
Okay. So, and then, Doug, you talked about getting the gates down by Seth. Have you done that?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay, perfect. So if something happens, we'll get it. Ellen, one thing that surprised me a little bit last year is they were there, and then I all excitedly said, Ellen, help, I need a permit. Can you do that thing for me? Can you and the DNR staff get the permit, like, issued before we get into the situation where I say, oh my gosh, Ellen, they're there, I need a permit. I didn't think this day would come.
Did you not get the permit when you needed it?
No, we did, but I had to like assault you with requests and need immediate turnaround. I mean, that was the problem.
I will try.
Okay.
It's just a piece of paper that two people sign. And we do it the same every year, and we keep it in a folder, and it's like, well, is it going to work this year? I can get to that to you for your November 26th meeting.
Okay.
I'll just bring it.
Okay. Thank you.
But then we know all the rules about that permit.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not our first rodeo.
Yeah, no, and that was part of the surprise last year because that's where the Olympics were on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm calling Ellen during primetime Olympics, and I'm asking if we can leave the gates out overnight, and oh rats, well Ellen's not answering because that's where Chris Shea said, I'm okay with it if Ellen's okay with it, and I'm like, oh man, it's 8 o'clock, and I bet Ellen's watching the Olympics and doesn't want to talk to me right now, so I don't want to bother you like that again this year, so.
Yeah, there aren't Olympics this year.
I know, but there'll be something else very exciting, like the Packers in the Super Bowl.
Oh, I promise I won't be watching that.
Okay, so North Channel Swamp Devil and burning. Melissa and I met with Brian Glinzinski last week to talk about the grant planning process and what we've got going here. One thing that he had mentioned to Todd Gleisner, and Todd, thank you for relaying the information to me, is Horcon's Swamp Devil is expected to get back from Minnesota sooner than spring of next year, and there's a possibility that it could be here on Rush Lake this fall, like this month. It's possible. So Brian's running hard with Rachel Brookings on the permitting. So if it does show up, he'll have the permit for it. And his number one channel is getting back to twos in an old channel that was in there. And that creates some advantages for creating burn breaks that could be on the lake. So his comment was other channels that could help create those burn breaks with a focus towards the north end. And before we talked about getting the Swamp Devil through that spray channel by the south launch. That one, I know, I've driven through that repeatedly early in the year, and now I know it's being used by people other than myself to go north and south through there, so it's being traveled. It's by no means a perfect channel, but it probably doesn't need the Swamp Devil in it to succeed and become a channel. The channel that goes to the east, kind of in Greens Bay and opens back to Mountain Road, to improve the flow, that really wouldn't do anything for us from a burn break standpoint, and if anything, would probably increase our nutrient loading in Rush Lake. So that one, because it doesn't help with burning and it's doesn't sound like it would be great for nutrients, that one's off the table too. So we're left with the north end. So last week, what I did after talking to Brian was I sent the aerial imagery that's detailed enough to make a meaningful difference to Art and Doug, who, when we were meeting for the subcommittee, shared that they had been out on the north part of the lake and had put stakes out identifying where that channel was, and so I challenged them to see if they could take that imagery that I provided to come up with where those channels might be. Doug was kind of looking at the maps and wondered if there was a way we could throw it up on the wall. Thanks to this guy there is, and I'd love to pull these up and see what we could talk about. So Art and Doug, is there a set of one of these images, 1937, 1981, 2005, or 2015 that you might prefer to look at, just to describe what you think?
Why don't you bring up the 1937 story?
Okay. Okay, so here, let me just zoom in and get it so it's over on the right. Oops, that's too much. Okay, so the north landing's kind of like right in the middle, like right where the mouse is, kind of right here, and then it goes down. The east landing is kind of like right at the very bottom of the screen, like the last visible stuff you can see is pretty close to where it is. It's right in here after this tree line tapers off. So, Doug, take it away.
Well, if you notice there, the open water areas are huge compared to what you're going to see on the next ones. The channel with that bar that's coming down there, the black line there,
this one?
No, over to the left.
Oh, here?
Yeah, right in there. That was where the old channel was, basically through there, even up into the 50s and 60s. When people come onto the lake, they would come on in that area, they would work around. Our place is just down in that left-hand corner.
That was there in the 80s too.
And the 80s, but we'll fast forward now. Go on to the next one now.
Sure. This is 1981. And I have it off the county GIS website, so it's not exactly a huge image, or so it looks a little different than the other, but it's what's there. So you can see that's the north boat landing right here coming in, and zoom out of here.
Yeah. What's filled in, if you notice that from that other big bay along the, I'm going to call it the west shore there, that now is all closed. But if we had a picture from 1950s, early 60s, you'd see quite a large bay just south of the boat landing, the north boat landing. That'd be that area right in there where he's moving that. That bay stayed in there pretty much all the way up until into the 90s, I would say. If we come down now, or if we move the picture up a little bit, if you can see the conditions now right there, this is that area that you see now is pretty much all filled in. But all those bays there, it was almost getting ideal in that area. And there the water was deep enough to work, to have these individual potholes. If you go south a little bit further with that picture, I don't know if you can or not.
Sure.
But you see how it opens up there? But you see, that was almost ideal for ducks. That was about a 50-50 mix between cattails and long stem bulrush and then open, potholes and water and that sort of thing.
Where the cursor is right now, that's roughly where the boat landing is, way down here at the bottom edge. So it comes out into this water. And
is this your property then?
It's a little hard to tell on that, but I believe that is ours. If it's not, it's just right on that spot in there. Okay, now if we can, do you have one that's later than that? I don't remember.
Yeah, I got 2005, right before the restoration began. So there's your north landing right here.
Right, and then if you follow down where it's a wooded area, that's our point there. But again, you can, it's a little bit, that picture isn't very good, but it was still, you had a fairly good mix of potholes and cattails. Unfortunately, after we drained the lake and then had the explosion of the things, if we had a picture from today, which I don't think we do have.
Nope, we got it in there, Doug. This is 2015.
Yeah, that's a little hard to tell with the amount of cattails that are in there, but basically, It just all filled right in. I think those areas there are spray areas.
Yeah, these are spray. There's a little bit of water here, and this is a pothole, and this is a little pothole, and basically that's all the water that's on the north end.
Move the map up a little bit, go south a little bit, the other way, there we go. But if you can see that today, it's basically all cattails. We had almost a perfect mix out in front of us there, and even to the north somewhat. Very conducive to the ducks nesting and being in that area. But now it's basically all filled in. Unfortunately, my family's a little bit disturbed with me because they figured I was the one that planned it all, got the whole project going so we could have a marsh out instead of our place instead of a good mix. So hopefully someday that'll be back to what it was before we did the lake drawdown.
Yeah.
And that line kind of through the center, isn't that the Swamp Devil channel?
Yeah, this is where you were, Art, when you called me. They took this detour off to the northeast and then beached it right here, and that's where you were when you called me. I checked your GPS coordinate, and that was right where it read.
And if you go up now, go up to the north with that cursor, up in that area, right? Go a little bit more. Now go to the right with that. Right in there is where they did a large spraying thing. I can't remember the fellow that worked for the DNR that was part of our group here then, but he was kind of misinformed in that area there is not much water there, and basically the Swamp Devil, we couldn't go any farther. Art and I and Bruce went back and where's your cursor again here? Go to your left a little bit, but about in that area there, well, we're Art in thing. The Swamp Devil, the second time around, went up to there, and if they'd went just another 50 feet is where Art and Bruce and I had marked the channel going up, swinging to the west, and then swinging up to the north boat landing. But they, instead of doing that, they backed up, and then they went to the east, just almost straight east there where the channel is, and so we're left farther, I think, right in that area.
Yeah, they came back and they went here.
Yeah, and they went that way. What the problem was is right in that area there, they hit again, the ground was higher there, the water was shallower, but they did chew their way through there and did make it up to the landing.
Oh, I was wrong. They came all the way back down to here, and then they went west to this pothole, and then north to this other pothole, and then up.
And that wasn't a bad route, really, other than getting to the west there on that short period in there. There's maybe 100 yards in there. So, it's kind of confusing just because of the map behind there, the lines. But that's basically it. That really filled in, unfortunately.
So the question for Brian was, where can, if I get this Swamp Devil and it's out there cutting channels for me and it cuts one off towards, I gave the same section of the lake. So if they're off here to the left cutting a channel over towards Twos through the bog, through the new cattail that's here, where else could they put the Swamp Devil to help make burn breaks here on the north side?
We're at 81 map.
81?
What would you think off of there, Doug?
Well,
like through here?
Actually, Art and I and some of us have talked about that, and if that Swamp Devil's there, it's not going to be, can we go here, can we go there, because it's not marked. We don't know for sure.
But you could get the GPS locate.
Well, but if we had a day that they would work with us and do something, I would say just go up the existing channel, widen it, go up to the north landing, cutting, one direction, turn around and come back and cut it. Just open that channel up some more. Eventually, if we can get the Swamp Devil back, then now you can pinpoint some of those areas. And I think they should be pinpointed really by water depth on the ice, to be honest with you.
Well, these, now I do recognize these, actually Matt Stevens' dad dug this ditch illegally, but this ditch, Ellen didn't hear that.
Those are the days you can do this.
It's on the tape.
I just realized that. So this has been, that path is old. That's where the guys, North Landing's up that way, it came down.
Correct. And they would work their way through those.
Or they went out that way?
Exactly.
No.
Yep.
You can do whatever you want, so
Good point.
Well, I've got the GPS yet with the waypoints on from where we put a couple marks in there. You know, when you get to Swamp Devil, I'll bring the GPS over there and you can follow that if you want to do that. It's got the tracks on it from when I went from the East Landing and went all through there, which is probably where he would drop off anyways again.
Well, what Doug said is true, widening what you got. But if you're cutting through the newer cattails, you're not going to have the bog issues from like they ran into when they were kind of just going whatever direction. The old bogs are what's really the problem. Trying to cut.
Well, it's some, but it was the depth too, because we were hitting mud. That's the thing is, if you got
the water's on there, it'll be okay.
Yeah, if we got the water like we have now, he should be able to go almost anywhere he wants to. Period.
The only thing I'm saying is these areas, probably if you pull the map up from the 90s, these areas they're always open.
Here, 2005, there.
Those were...
Same stuff.
Because we ran those with outboards, like we run.
Yeah.
Because we came off the property. Yeah.
Yeah,
I ran all those all the way back in here.
How far is
It came out right in front of our property.
Two's is over, it kind of starts right here, Seth.
So
No, you have to go even south further.
yeah, okay.
Well, it kind of snakes along the shore,
Yeah,
but
that's Dewey Foot's there.
Too bad they won't put the Swamp Devil in the North Landing and just go to Two's from the
Maybe
North Landing.
they do that.
And that
Be able
Distance wise, it's about the same if you went here and south versus there and west.
The only thing is the East Landing there, that was actually dredged out. You know, I don't know exactly. I didn't get exactly up to the ramp on the north end. I turned around before.
But they could cut the path out.
Yeah.
There's lots of water by the ramp on the north end. They can put it right in there.
Okay. Well, then that's good.
So, Todd, to your comment, like this used to be, here, this is 2005, it still had water in it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing to call out because you could say, you know what, that protects the Dewey Foot and Bones properties, because one of the things we talked about, Melissa, was property owner permission if you're adjacent to their property or whatever. So building in, that's not all that far from shore. And I know Brian was sort of comfortable with canary grass or the grass that's on the shore and that break between cattail and grass is stopping the fire. But it's easy to say you're comfortable with it when you're having breakfast in a restaurant, and it's probably maybe a little different when you're going out for permits and stuff.
You think?
Yeah, I would bet on it.
You don't use canary grass as a fire break when you're burning cattail.
It's not canary grass because that's an invasive, but whatever. I'm not doing Brian justice. The point is, I think, Todd, what you said, this could be a good channel to cut because it adds protection to this northwest shore of the North Bay, and this is our problem child of vegetation, or at least a good hunk of it. So would that be a fair thing to communicate to Brian, is in here, sending it northeast from this point down here?
The only point I'm trying to make, when you get out there on that swamp level and you're trying to line something up, it doesn't look like that.
But they go by GPS coordinates. They don't have to.
If they have that, that would be
you
what
can
they
pull
could
them
do.
right off of that.
Yeah. Then that would work.
actually, if you're out there now, do you have a smartphone?
Yeah.
Have you gone?
I know it can show me where I'm at, but all I'm saying is, unless you got the GPS coordinates, you're going to be going by that. It's going to look a lot different when you're out there.
You can pull the GPS coordinate right off the maps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you're saying, Art, with the water's high, so it's easier to cut anything, but it's still way easier to cut the newer growth that's over 10 years old.
I mean, I can tell you when I got to the end of that channel that was up there, I stood on a boat seat that I had there, and you could tell where the high stuff was and where there had been probably at one time open water in that, because those cattails are not as high.
Right.
And the thing is you could probably see that from the swamp level. You're up high enough where you'd be able to see some of that stuff just visually.
Right.
Well, the bottom line is if it's available and if they can get up in there, they can't do harm.
Anything they can do.
Anything they can do.
Right.
But if you need to do a firewall, they're the ones that know where to put them.
Yeah. They were just looking for feedback on, Brian's looking for feedback on where else could be beneficial. So the takeaways that I have from listening to everyone here is we could cut something if it's out there and Brian can get it permitted and he can get an operator to operate it. Cut a channel going northeast along the shoreline there, consistent with the old sort of flow waterway that used to be in there. Art, that GPS coordinate you gave me was kind of up in here, and the other two that you gave me kind of tracked off to the northwest. I think you gave me like 315 or something. I forget the number.
Yeah.
So wherever that channel ends, you take that off to the northwest and try and hook back up here.
You'll clock right into the existing channel.
Right.
And I took a waypoint when I backed off and went back up towards there. There was like an opening, and I kind of took a waypoint looking on a GPS about what would have just been a straight shot, lining up all 3 points in there. So
all the way up there with your outboard?
Yeah.
Holy smokes!
There's water up there.
That's good.
So if it happens, first thing I'm going to do is call you, Art, so that we can get you and your GPS on board with Brian to make sure it all lines up.
When is this one time we're going to do this?
The way Melissa, why don't you describe it so I can talk less, and someone who may have heard things differently could say it from a different.
Well, I think there was still a lot that he had arranged for it to get here this month, right?
Oh yes, and if it doesn't show up from Minnesota to Horicon, it's not showing up at all. But his view from talking to Dave Bolha at Horicon was it's possible. And if he can get it, and he can get the permit, then he wants to keep it busy. So if Dave Bolha says you can have it for a week, he wants to keep it busy for a week.
Dice it up.
So no guarantees that it's going to happen, but if he gets a call from Horicon,
he's working with Rachel to get a permit?
he would be.
Is he working on it right now? They don't do those overnight.
Listen, why don't you take this one so I can stop talking?
Well, is it a 109 permit that's needed?
I don't know what it is, but this is a water rights and zoning thing that they have to do. Remember when we did it the first time, Christy Rogers gave us the permit, and we were worried that we're going to have to take the stuff that it cuts out, and it was decided that we could leave it there. I don't know if that's going to happen. So if you're really thinking about getting a sump double in there, you need to get going on a permit to do it.
And I wasn't clear if Brian was working on that permit or not.
He is coordinating everything. The only support he asked for from us was tell me where you could want it to go, and I'll see if I can make it happen with everything that he was arranging. That was the one action item.
You know, I would just say this with regards to whether we have to remove it or not. Right now we've got floating bogs out there because of everything else. Where is that any different having all of those bogs?
It's man-made.
That doesn't matter.
One's man-made and one's nature.
Okay.
No, we don't need to say because of this, we can do that. Christy Rogers gave us a gift, and we need to remember that.
They'll definitely, the front of Two's is really filled in also, and they will have some heavy cutting to get up to the shore there, I'm sure.
So, I want to know more about your prescribed burn projects. So how big an acreage are you going to set on fire?
We don't have a prescribed burn project, but depending on the outcome of discussions yet to happen, we could be talking about controlled burning. For instance, our meeting with Fox Valley Tech later this month, John Kellerman, who is in charge of their burning instruction, is present. Brian Glinzinski from DU was he shared with us that he can be a burn boss, but he doesn't really have the staff to do a burn. So if the stars align and we have partners like Fox Valley Tech who are at the table and want to help out on the lake, and Brian Lemzinski who can help out, we might be able to find a way to make it sing. And at that time, we cross that bridge, Ellen.
We've discussed kind of the northern portion.
That's another thing you need to get a permit for too.
No kidding.
You can't just set this thing on fire.
We weren't talking about burning tomorrow or this winter or next spring or next fall. We were talking about Swamp Devil for today. Fox Valley Tech is a potential partner for our project, and depending on what they do or don't want to do with our project, there may be an opportunity for them or to you or other partners to want to burn on the lake. So nowhere in our pilot do we actually include burning, but if the right partners wanted to, and we had enough time to do a permit and do it properly so that people like you are smiling instead of looking at me with concerned eyes, then we would do it.
Well,
it's that simple.
I think this group needs to have somebody from Horicon come up and talk about what it's like to burn cattails.
I think that'd be a great idea.
And how big is big enough, and how...
Who is on that crew that would be able to talk to us about that? Can you send me maybe a name or contact
But
information?
that's somebody from the department, not somebody from the Fish and Wildlife Service. They're a Fish and Wildlife Service. Horicon split.
Right.
Third and 2/3, and we burn on ours and they burn on theirs, but the feds also burn at Eline, which is across the road from Rush Lake.
Right.
So there's different people
Steve
that do
talked
it.
about that a lot.
Steve is retired.
Yeah.
But he talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
He also did talk about how difficult it was and how you have to have a crew and how...
Well, of course.
But it's... Yeah, it'd be great to find somebody who we could
So
talk to
I
about
think
that.
you need to have,
Why can't we go to them?
I think all Brett was getting at is if the Swamp Devil was going to be there, he was going to try to make it more convenient for somebody if they wanted to do some burning.
That was the way Brian posed it to us, is that the Swamp Devil can create features on the lake that assist with future management efforts. And while we might not have something that's ready for prime time yet to go on that management effort, that doesn't mean there couldn't be, depending on the way our project develops in the future.
that's fine. I just know all the players that you're talking about, and I know how Brian talks about stuff.
Nothing's
Easier
set
said than done.
Nothing's set in stone. It's called brainstorming, and you're doing it because we're developing the project.
So then, for this group, how big a burn proposal would you be sending in? 50 acres, 100 acres, a third of the lake?
We had discussed the northern,
No more than 3,000 acres.
Hopefully.
And what wind direction would you have? And which hospital would we send all the victims to?
Not River.
Those are all.
I mean, there's a whole lot that has to be done before you set a match out there. So.
That's no surprise there at all. I mean, guess what? You burn cattail, you release the phosphorus, the cattail holds into the lake. So it all fits into the broader project, and it's not like we're rushing out to do anything. It's, if there's an opportunity, we will explore the opportunity. And if there's an opportunity to have the Swamp Devil on the lake, we will explore the opportunity to use it to help that future opportunity.
Okay.
Now, is that permit that we need is the same permit that we got the last few years for the Swamp Devil, right?
I don't know. Brian's applying for it. So he didn't task us with any of that.
Well,
I'll defer to Ducks Unlimited and their technical expertise.
They wouldn't bring it out here without a permit, would they?
I would hope not.
I don't know.
Okay, so
I don't know how Horicon would
But
even
I
do
don't
it.
know that.
right. So I guess that's the assumption.
I don't know anything
That's the assumption
about
that I go on, is that this guy who knows what he's doing isn't going to bring it out here without the proper permitting, because he's going to lose his job.
Brian has his hands in a lot of things.
I don't know Brian from Adam Marie, I'm just saying.
I do, so.
It's fine.
Nothing's happening on
I
it.
think
If
you
something
need to-
develops and Brian's driving the initiative, we're supporting it.
I think we should probably circle back with Rachel to see what she knows.
Well,
This group doesn't know who Rachel is yet. They've never met her.
that's okay.
Well, yes, you have.
Rachel's the new Ellen, right?
No, Rachel's the new Brian Woodbury, the new Tim Lazat, the new PV. How far back do I have to go? Way back when Ellen. Yeah. A long time ago. I know that.
You know, the irony of that thing, over 50 years ago, myself and a neighbor fellow tried to get that marsh or the lake to burn on the north end. We couldn't get that to burn for life. We tried everything.
You have a permit?
Oh yeah.
All that were necessary.
Well,
Get all that
okay.
necessary.
there's a whole lot of, you all know me and I know all of you. And yeah, we have a lot of permits, but there are reasons that we do some of these things. And there's a whole, if you put smoke in the air, where's it going to end up? Where are all those little particles going to end up? They don't come right back down.
Or kind of end up in my house. But we don't. Again, they're not going to burn without a permit.
Oh, Todd, you say that was such.
I don't see Brian doing that without covering his tracks.
maybe I'm naive.
He's got to do steps A, B, and C, 1, 2, 3.
He's not, because he said he couldn't do it himself.
Right.
He said that in the affirmative. He can't do it
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
But he said, but if you guys are talking to the right people and you have the right level of engagement, that maybe.
Now I got 3 people talking and I don't know what any of you are saying.
You know what that means? It's getting late.
Yeah, it is.
We are getting very late.
So we've identified 2 spots we could cut. Is there anything on the east that's worth mentioning to Brian? There was that pocket of water that was going kind of along the east shore here. I don't know if you say, hey, you could go venture north. That's 37. Here's 81. There's these pools out in front here. If it's sent up here to make some protection, I don't know. I'd venture to say throw it on the wish list. If everything happens perfect, why not?
Well, if you pass up in front of our house.
Yeah.
My canopy was grudging the home.
Yeah. So like even in 2005, all that water was there, so there's no reason you couldn't go wander up into it. And you know what? That middle spot where the channel was, you could argue you could go up in there and you could conceivably cut across.
Well, that old bog is tough to get through.
Yeah, well.
Go out to the right there. See that little water?
This?
Right there, yeah. If that is water.
Yep.
Beyond north of that, unless you change the level of the lake, you're not going to create nothing up in there.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense because 37 had, it was
right about there.
There was a lot of bog right there.
Yeah.
So that's right at the north edge of that clump of trees in 2005.
That's where its spray area is.
It was at north of the clump of trees.
Where the spray area is, it really didn't do it?
Yeah,
They sprayed way up on the north end, and it was. I wished I would have known they were going there because I would have tried to talk them out of it because it couldn't possibly do any good.
It would have been nice if that was in front of your place in the center up there.
But not way up in the corner up at the north end.
To the west.
To the west, yeah.
South.
Okay, so what I'll tell Brian is we came up with 3 things. One, this kind of southwest to northeast strip here, connecting the Swamp Devil Channel from here, going northwest to north-northwest here, which are those waypoints you identified. And of course, if it happens, Art, you'd be contacted to actually give coordinates from the device itself. And also on the east side, going up, this is 2005, up through these pools. And if it's able, it could wander to the northwest and connect with that Swamp Devil Trail where it ended where you were the other day, Art. So
Preferably out of the proposed treatment plants.
Yeah, that one might go through it. So either way, I'll check it and dance around the topic if I have to. Okay, so the 3 minus the proposed treatment plot so it doesn't cut through the middle of something we're proposing to experiment on. Are there any other comments on North Channel Swamp Devil topic? No. Okay. Public input. Okay.
To adjourn.
So the next meeting is is Monday, November 26th. We could set the January meeting at that meeting date. Should we just do that?
Yeah.
If we're gonna have a subcommittee meeting before then,
Yeah, we'll have
we can do that on the 13th.
Of November? I don't see why not. Let's,
kind of stuck in there.
yeah.
My October is pretty well swamped, so.
No, that's fine.
I'm usually flexible.
November 13th, anytime.
Okay.
Would be great.
Okay, so to recap, the next meeting is Monday, November 26th, Nepeuskun Town Hall at 7 o'clock. That's a special meeting to review the proposals and also talk bylaws and insurance. And we'll set the 2019 meeting date or dates if we want to set more than one at that time. Anybody motion to adjourn?
I did already.
Already done, second.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, I'll bring the carp control permit.
Hopefully they don't need it before November, whatever that date is.
I hope not.
God.
Okay. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Brett, did you have another?